So I'm Darren Stevenson. I'm here with my dear friend Ryan First Diver, Nitsitapi Man, and we're having some discussions about early attempts to repatriate cultural material and things that have been uh, essentially stolen under the idea that these are natural history items and then ensconced in museums. So Ryan, please start wherever you want. We could go back to the meteorite situation if you're willing, and keep a
Well,
bookmark on, on
I'll
where we.
talk about the meteorite, but I just like I want to talk about I want to tell a Harvard story
Okay, great.
because that's where we were. We can return to New York in the history when we get there,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, and I know for my camera thing, I'm gonna fuck this all up, but that's you're just gonna have to deal with that.
No problem.
um, all right, so in in 1993, um, I started working with the 1990 or maybe 1994. I started working with the Blackfoot Tribal Business Council in Browning, Montana. I was a student in Boston at the time. I have Blackfoot heritage, and I was studying all things Blackfoot while I was in school. And um, one of the things that was going on at the time, I think it was 1993, there was a in the U.S. they had proposed uh, this Land Consolidation Act,
Hmm.
and for the tribes. And what they were thinking was, you know, in the when the reservations were first established in the states, each male head of household was given so many acres of land, proportioned out to, you know, I think it was like 214 acres or something. But it's since split up through the generations, so that now, you know, somebody coming in might only have an acre of land, if that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to make money off of that land when you don't have much of it. And so the government was proposing, well, let's reconsolidate those original tracts and um, and then have the families that live on that space, who are obviously, you know, closely related to the original title owner, um, have them come up with some kind of business plan to work that land, and and then support them to do that. So this was the 1993 Land Consolidation Act, and I thought it sounded really fishy, you know, because I'm like, what, you got to take those original land tracts back into trust,
Right.
and then these guys got to like figure out a business plan.
Yeah.
Like this a First Nations reserve. What are you thinking, right? Like, what's
Right.
up here? This sounds fishy. And a lot of people in Indian country were thinking that at the time, you know. And so I looked into it, and because I was going to school in Boston, I was fortunate to have access to Federal Reserve libraries. And so I could go look up the communications, the transcripts of communications between the Bureau of Land Management and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and, you know, the Senate and the Bureau of Indian, everybody that was involved in bringing this act to Congress and having it passed. Eh?
Hmm.
I could see every step of the way and their plans. I got their like plans on paper and everything, and they it was wicked, dude. They had 5 tribes that they were set up to start this land consolidation act on, and the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana was one of them.
Hmm.
And they um, the Bureau of Land Management had mapped out where all of the important subsurface resources were.
Of course.
And so those were the places where they were going to do the experiment, take it into trust. And their whole plan was to mine that shit while they had it in trust.
Yeah.
And it would be a long time because it's hard to get those families to work together, you know,
Yeah.
on those original land trusts that have been, you know, broken up over 100 years now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I brought all of the paperwork to Madge Walters, who was on the Blackfeet Tribal Council at the time, and Earl Oldperson, who was the chair. He's the longest, you know, he is the chief of the Blackfeet in Montana.
Hmm.
He's passed now. He just passed the other year, but for most of my life, he was the chief of the Blackfeet in Montana, and I always had his blessings with the shit I was doing.
Hmm.
But I brought this stuff to them. They went to Washington D.C. with it and shut it down. Okay, and that kind of gave me an inroads with tribal government down there. Like I didn't do it on purpose to like, you know, create any inroads or anything like that, but that's what it gave me, some relationships through doing that research that I just thought needed to be done because I thought something bullshit's going on here, you know, and it sure was.
Yeah, it's like a recolonization.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the process still continues today. It's
Of
like not
course.
stopped at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
And by the way, back then your name was Ryan Heavyhead.
Yeah.
Copy.
Well, no, it was
No?
Ryan Hancock.
Ah,
That was even before.
okay.
Yeah, my name was Ryan Hancock, and so anyway, I helped them stop that Land Consolidation Act from being instituted, and basically, you know, mining the shit out of the reserve. And then I was invited to some things in the subsequent summer season in Montana that gave me access to Blackfoot art and ceremony, and I wanted to know more. Once I started, you know, experiencing and seeing that, I wanted to know more about it. So I was going into my last year of undergraduate studies in Boston, and I proposed to my mentor there that I do some kind of honors thesis regarding Blackfoot art, and he gave me the summer to think about what I wanted to do. And I never came up with anything, you know, very interesting. When I came back to him at the end of the summer, you know, I had my experiences up here to talk about, but I hadn't reviewed any literature or done, you know, I didn't have a scholarly question at all. I just wanted to know more about Blackfoot art. My whole interest in getting into anthropology and native studies to begin with was just an identity quest, you know. So for me, it was just like learn more. So I had seen some things I wanted to learn more, and he gave me a stack of books when I came back at the end of summer with no good question.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a stack of books, and he says, "Go away for 3 weeks and you read these. You have to read them all, and you have to come here and be prepared to talk about them, and then we'll formulate some kind of question, right, together." Right. So I went away, and a lot of these books that he gave me were books that were problematizing museum and academies work with indigenous art altogether. And in there was included a little like privately published thing where somebody had gone and surveyed all of the museums in England, Scotland, Ireland, and France, and put together like an inventory of all of the California Indian items in those museums, just as a resource for the tribes, basically. It was called Times Flotsam. I even forget the author's name, but it's called Times Flotsam. And it was just this inventory of European museum stuff. And when I read a lot of good stuff in those books he gave me, but when I seen that little thing, I was like, oh, there's something I can do. It's right back to that, just like I had just done with the land consolidation. Here's something I can contribute. What if I found out where all the Blackfoot stuff is? And I did up an inventory and I give it to the tribe. Right. This was the idea that I got out of his stack of stuff. And I ended up getting a little grant through my university to carry out that research. I went to try to find out, like, okay, where do you find out where the museums are that have Blackfoot material culture? If you wanted to look for Blackfoot material culture in the world, in its museums, what resource would you turn to tell you where to go?
Right. Nothing.
There's these like phone book sized nation by nation museum guides that have these listings that the best you get is like Native North American, Native North American culture, Native North American, whatever, anthropology or ethnology or whatever, right? You don't get tribe by tribe. And so what I had to do is go through all of those world country guides, find the places that had Native North American collections, copy their addresses and all that shit, and then send them a letter, every one of them. So I sent over 4,000 letters.
What?
Yeah. I had a little grant from my because I was doing an honors thesis. I had wicked, like, they were going to support me, whatever what I wanted to do. But they had a little small, like, undergraduate honors thesis. It was like, I don't know, $1,000 or something, but I bought a lot of stamps. And I sent out 4,000 letters. I bought a post office box in Boston, and I got Earl Old Person to write me a letter from Montana, from the Blackfeet tribe. He's the chief, saying I have his blessings. Please give this guy our inventory of what's in your museum. And I started getting dump loads of mail from all around the world,
Mm-hmm.
And then it was interesting because some places that you wouldn't think would respond to you responded. Like, for instance, the Vatican. They gave me a really good response. They sent me photographs of everything that they have, along with the descriptions and accessions information, and they were very clean, and this is it, right? This is what we got. But then there were museums like Harvard's Peabody Museum, for instance, which was like within walking distance across the river from where I lived in Brookline, and they didn't send me anything. And for months I didn't get any response from them, and I'm like, they're one of the major North American museums for indigenous collections. Like, why haven't they given me a response? And so one day I decided to do like a strategic spy mission and go to the museum. and see what they had on display. So I went over there, walked through their exhibit, and I seen for Blackfoot material, they had a women's society headdress. It's like a buffalo headdress with horns. They had Yellow Kidney. He was a beaver man from Montana at the turn of the century. They had Yellow Kidney's scalp lock suit. Hey, like his buckskin suit with the scalp locks from the Scarface story. They had a couple of horn spoons and a pair of moccasins on display as well. And so I went home and I called them up the next day. And I said, hey, I'm a researcher from University of Massachusetts, and I sent you guys a letter a couple of months back. I haven't had any response, asking for your inventory of Blackfoot materials as part of a project that I'm doing with the Blackfeet Nation from Montana. And I'm just wondering when you guys are going to respond. And then they said, okay, hold on the line. They got whoever needed to talk to me. One of their curators came back. I think her name was Susan, if I remember right. But anyway, I'll just call her Susan. So Susan came back and said, came on the phone and said, well, we didn't respond to you because we really don't have anything of significance at the Peabody that's Blackfoot. I mean, we have a pair of moccasins and a couple of horn spoons. And I said, well, that's funny, because I was in your museum just yesterday looking through what you have on exhibit, and I seen that there's a women's society headdress there, and you have Yellow Kidney's scalp lock suit that's considered a sacred bundle. And I would like to make an appointment to come to your museum and look at your other accessions information and find out what else you have that's Blackfoot in your storage. And so she went away for a couple of minutes from the phone, Susan, and then came back and said, well, it takes, like here at Harvard, you have to schedule months in advance to come and do that kind of research. And so, if you want to do that, and I say, yeah, I'm here. So schedule it, put it on the calendar. She went away for about 3 more minutes, came back on the phone and said, can you come in next week?
Wow.
Well, she was just bluffing me, dude. It's all a fucking bluff.
Of course.
So anyway, she schedules me to come in there the next week, and I go in, and I've just got, a notebook and shit. Like, this is, we didn't have internet and shit, really, like going on. I don't know, we just barely. And so anyway, I went in and I went through, their files. Susan met me in their accessions department and gave me this paper, and which had a list of all their Blackfoot items. They'd finally put together a list for me, and at the very top of that paper was human remains, which there was a skull there. And then right underneath that, the next item on the list was a Beaver Bundle. And then went down from there. There were several sacred items, bundles, and then a lot of other things. That the collection was significant.
Yeah.
And so I told her, well, I'd like to look at the accessions files on this Beaver Bundle first thing, And so she gave me that, and I started taking all the notes. They got that bundle for like $300 or something, you know, um, from the they got it from what is it, the Denver Art Museum. You know, there was a trade that went on, and Denver Art Museum got from Madge Walters, and Madge Walters was this lady from San Francisco
Hmm.
who was very rich, who went to, but had some kind of terminal cancer. She went to Browning. She met with a Swimsunder. I think it might have been Mike Swimsunder's dad, the late Mike Swimsunder's dad, who's in my lineage for the Beaver Bundle. He brought her to Blood Tribe, where she got to witness and participate in the Sundance. And she connected at that time with three young people here, Eugene Creighton, Frank Redcrow, and it was a woman, I want to say Ethel, but it's a Big Sorrel Horse was her last name, Big Sorrel Horse. Three people that Badge Walters, young people, like in their like early 20s. And she connected with them. They all had parents and close relatives in major positions in the societies, and in the Sundance and such. And they started selling her things. They would sometimes they would fake it. They would make the shit themselves
Uh-huh.
and sell her a replica that she couldn't tell the difference.
Of
But
course.
but going through the museums, we can tell the difference.
Of course.
Um, Sometimes they would sell her that stuff, but a lot of times, once someone with a major bundle was passing on,
Mm.
they would go in and acquire that bundle for a very small amount of money.
Yeah.
Sometimes 35, $50.
Yeah. Uh, can I interrupt you with a question here for a moment?
Sure.
Explain to the people listening something about what a beaver bundle is.
All right. So Beaver Bundle, for instance, the thing that I ended up repatriating from Harvard in this story, um, is the embodiment of the original treaty between human beings and animals, in this area, like the Blackfoot territory of North America, which is substantial. It's like the upper Missouri and upper Saskatchewan drainage basins is the headwaters of two major river systems. And this goes back to like when the Beaver Bundle came in was the same time that dogs were domesticated, because
Wow.
they're part of that story. So that's how old this goes back. And
And about how long is that ago?
I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you what the scientists think. I don't know what if
Do you
they're
have any
right.
guess? No idea?
Huh?
Before there were horses, right?
Oh, 5 to 8,000 years
Okay.
ago.
That's what I was looking for. Great.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
At least to have domesticated dogs
Mhm.
here. And
Say a little more about the bundle.
and not only that, but like I think it's even longer than that, because here you have like Iniskim at sites, which are buffalo stones. They're like these fossils that look like buffaloes, but they're part of a ceremony that became part of the Beaver Bundle after the Beaver Bundle already existed. And those things are found, those Iniskim are found at bison sites here in Alberta going back like 9-10,000 years. So I think the Beaver Bundle's even older than that. Like, it's very, very old. It's the first medicine bundle in the Blackfoot tradition. I know it, like nobody knows. A lot of people out there don't know what medicine bundles are or whatever, but in this case, without going through the whole origin of that. It's really a bunch of skins from animals who gave knowledge to humans in a treaty agreement situation.
Yeah, this is the humans and the animals coming together in relation
Yeah,
under the auspices of an agreement that they have together, that they form together. And the
yeah,
bundle is the embodiment of those agreements, if I'm understanding something.
yep,
Okay.
yeah. And so, that bundle is very fluid. Um, New, like, animals bring new things in, animals and plants bring new things into the bundles through humans. And then humans have experiences that the beaver bundles end up kind of like say somebody has an experience where they themselves are given some kind of very important knowledge um, from an animal, like in a spiritual way. Like they have a dream about it and it's vivid, and the animal tells them in their head, he's talking to, like, and a beaver bundle owner might look at that person and watch them for a little bit and see what happens with that. And if it seems to be that they think that their experience was very valid, they got something beneficial that should, that the people should adopt, then the beaver man woman might go to that person and ask to kind of buy that gift into the bundle. And so the beaver bundle's constantly absorbing things and then putting things out too. So if they have, somebody has that new experience, say they have an experience where um you know like what has happened, um the thunder, the thunder came in conflict with people, and the humans relationships with animals is what kind of saved them from that conflict. The animals dealt with the thunder on behalf of the people, the crows in particular. Um, and the thunder was made to kind of make amends to the people for something it had done. So it was giving the people a bundle uh, that would protect them from it. Not only thunder, but its close associates, which included bears.
Mm.
And um, in order for that person's experience to be legitimated and brought kind of into the Orthodox tradition so that the bundle was like validated by the community, the beaver bundle would feed it and give some things from the beaver bundle into that bundle um to validate it. Hey, so a beaver bundle is kind of the hub, hey,
Copy.
uh of because the what matters is the treaty between the living beings here. That is the beaver bundle.
And
And every
also, it's a kind of library of transfers.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Transfer meaning when something profoundly sacred, powerful, or meaningful is given out or brought in.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's the ceremonial process of the transfer, of course.
yeah.
Okay, let me ask you to pause for right here. Can you hold your thought?
I will.
The reason is the recording's about to end, so I have to restart it to continue recording.
Cool.
So hold your thought and we'll be right back. All right, so I just want to clarify a few things before we continue. We're going to go to the bookmark of the woman in San Francisco, right? And we're going
Max
to
Walters. Yeah.
say again.
Match Walters. Yeah.
Matt Walters.
Yeah.
But we're still talking a little bit about the Beaver Bundle, and I want to just hear from you. What is the meaning of a transfer? We've said a little bit about what the Beaver Bundle is. Explain, if you will, a little bit about transfer.
Yeah, well, transfer is being given a way of doing something. If it's a major transfer, a lot of times it's being given a new way of life. When it's a Beaver Bundle transfer, that's what it is. Hey, it's being given a whole new way of life and a new role. It's a um what do you call it? Um, it's a it can be a rite of passage. It can be as simple as somebody teaching you how to make a sandwich. It could be as complicated as, you know, someone training you in something extremely specialized that maybe two or three people on the face of the earth know about, you know. Um, so all that stuff can be transfer. When it comes to the Blackfoot's way of life and stuff, um, you really need to be exposed to those bundles in order to get the core philosophies. You don't have to take care of a bundle necessarily. Just, be in the community and exposed to them and such to get some of those core philosophies. And if you, from, if you don't do that, you can be Blackfoot and not be Blackfoot almost. You can be here and grow up here, and well, not really. Everybody here is exposed to the bundles. We all got that core shit. But if you never lived here and been exposed to that, then it's you don't got the culture. You don't got it, right? It's just it's in those bundles. It's not a religious thing so much. It's cultural, but it has these kind of religious underpinnings, because you can connect all of these things to these bundles. These bundles have these origins that are, very like legendary origins, lots of mythological things, animals and people sitting down and making treaties and shit,
Yes.
Like, yeah. I want to get back to Harvard, but
absolutely.
yeah,
I just want to say a couple of things.
I don't want to leave questions unanswered. Do you have?
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things, and feel free to correct me, because I'm, just an outsider, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the bundle seems to me to be something that we don't really have in the West an idea of. It's like a library of histories and relationships and traditions that is itself alive in some way.
Yeah, it's a living thing.
This is what I want to be really clear about.
Yeah, the bundle's a living being, and when you're taking care of it, that's a living being that you're taking care of.
Yes.
And you have to nurture it, and you have to tend to, like, everything that, like, all the kind of crazy shit that you would with any human being, living being.
It is not, we don't have a category for this in English. There's no category for this. Only the category of living being, but never we would think in English that something that we would be likely to view as an object would be a living being.
Yeah, and there's, like, we're gonna get into some of that too when we talk about Harvard.
Okay. I just wanted to just take a moment and clarify a few of those unusual things, because without understanding this, you're not going to really have any hope of even conceptualizing what a bundle is.
No, well, like a lot of people have asked me to try to explain concisely what the beaver bundle or any bundle is. It's really difficult. With the beaver bundle, the most concise explanation that I have is that it is the living embodiment of a treaty between the humans and the animals. It is tangibly a roll of mostly animal skins and other artifacts that have come into that bundle.
Paint.
Right? Paint, tobacco, tobacco seeds, stick calendars. With the beaver bundle, there's a lot of things wrapped in it, but it's mostly animal skins, and the ceremony is a reenactment of the treaty. And but interestingly, the dances follow a progression, like an annual phenological progression of um, animal mating.
Mm.
And so that the dances are mostly animal dances. Well, they're all animal dances, but they follow a sequence through the season that you're speaking toward. Whenever you're in Blackfoot ceremony, you're always speaking toward whatever's happening and going to happen in the like very near future. And that's just a renewal of the treaty every time that goes on. So the Beaver Bundle does this twice a year, at the end of summer and at the end of winter. There's just the two seasons really formally recognized, and there's words for that transition, moto and moko, between them, like fall and spring and fall, but they're not really seasons per se. They're transition points between summer and winter.
The between time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just the transition. It's not even, there's not even a between time. There's not a gap. There's summer and then winter. Boom, boom. And it feels like that here too. Like when Itotstoi comes, the cold arrives. That's what it's literally called. And it does. Boom. And it's here. You were in summer last week. You were wearing shorts and t-shirt, and now you got snow and it's sub-zero.
And then associated with each of the beings or elements in the Beaver Bundle, there are songs.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like each of the animals, well, the Beaver Bundle, this is the thing. Nobody knows how many songs are in the Beaver Bundle. Hundreds and hundreds have come and gone. But there is a core group of songs from the original treaty, and some of the major things that have happened that all of the Beaver Bundles have kind of like because there's more than one Beaver Bundle at this point, right? There was originally the one and an origin story to that. And then other people had experiences where they were told to create Beaver Bundles and such. But they had to do it through the original, right? So it's all got the original link to it, right? It's all got something tangibly, like physically, from the original.
Yeah, one imagines a situation where, for example, you have a fire.
Yeah.
And the fire has been started from a coal from a previous fire.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way back to the first fire.
Yeah.
And so this fire right in front of you has the first fire in it.
Yep.
By analogy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Precisely. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because things wear out in the bundles, like physical things.
Of course.
You have to replace them. We're talking 10,000 years plus, maybe,
Right. Yeah.
You have to replace things when they wear out. but it's like the fire, like you say, hey, it's the same fire. You know,
Yes.
you have to feed more wood in that fucking fire, right? But
Yes.
that's yeah. So yeah, the beaver bundle, the animals all gave their robes, which is a symbol of protection, right? Their robes, what they use to protect, camouflage themselves, all that stuff. Think about that. You know, that's what they gave that, and then they sang a song or many songs,
Ah.
and in each of those songs were other things like how they get their medicines, how they hunt their foods, how they make their homes, how they live with their spouses, how they raise their children, like all of these kind of things. When human beings, like in this story of the beaver bundle origin, um, the animals looked at the human beings as the most recent arrival, basically, like a very recent arrival and ill-equipped, ill-adapted. Um, we can't run fast. We can't swim very well. We can't climb trees very well. We can't fly at all. You know, we're weak. We're soft. We're slow. We're fucking.
And we don't have a robe.
We don't have a robe.
We
And
literally
but
have no robe. They could have called
okay,
us like the no robe people.
but all right. In the origin story of the Beaver Bundle, there's something about not having a robe
Ah.
because there's a point where Nomsky, who's the tiger salamander, steps up to offer his contribution to the bundle. And right away, the other animals start mocking him because he doesn't have a robe to give. He's not given anything physical into the bundle. There's no robe. You don't got no fur, no feathers, no nothing. And so the animals were mocking him. They were telling him he's just naked. He doesn't have anything. Why is he even here? They don't understand it, you know? And he got mad and he sang this song, which I know. And then he left the lodge. His wife was still there and she hung out. I don't know why she didn't leave, but that's her. Anyway, he left, and the song that he sang brought on a deluge rainstorm so heavy that the lake that they were camped next to, the waters were rising and threatening to flood out the ceremony for the rest of the night. The whole, like, you know, the whole treaty.
Right.
And so the animals begged the salamander's wife to bring him back and stop the rain. And she did. And then with another song, which I know. And those were his contributions to the bundle, those songs. And then right after him, ironically, Matsi Kapisa, the frog, the chorus frog, stood up to contribute to the bundle. And the Namski, the tiger salamander who'd just been mocked, said the same criticisms to the frog. The fuck are you doing here? You don't got anything to give to this bundle. You're just naked. You don't got anything to offer. And he pushed him. He pushed him on his chest. And the frog fell down on his back, and he fell down, and he had his hands up like this by his head, with 4 fingers on one side and 3 on the other. And he told the animals, yeah, he told them, this gets 7. I'm giving 7 winter moons to the humans, during which all of your hides, all of your beautiful robes are going to be so thick, so lovely. The humans are going to be hunting you and wanting to kill you.
Kind of a curse.
Yep.
Because let me be clear about what he's saying. He's saying,
it was
in
a curse.
Winter, all of you people who have robes, your robes are going to be so thick and warm that the humans will hunt you for those robes.
Yep.
Right? So what he's giving to the humans is the capacity to wear the robes of the other animals in a way.
Yeah, well, he's giving them a very long winter.
Yeah.
But he's giving everybody a long winter.
I see.
And the frog is the one that hops between the seasons. You know, when it comes to the moons, there's a Blackfoot moon called Metsi Kapisaki, the frog moon. And that's the one that it's either a winter or summer moon, depending on whether it's a leap year. And it will leap into the summer if it's a leap year. The leap year, the extra moon, the 13 moon always comes in the winter, as far as I've come to know.
Between two specific other moons?
What's that?
Between 2 specific other moons?
Yes. Well, the frog is always where he is. He's between, it's between Saaki, the duck moon, and Apistishkit Satos, the flower moon. That's where the frog will be. That's when the frogs mate. A lot of the, all of the stuff around the Beaver Bundle has to do with the
mating time.
A lot of it, yeah. That's the recreation, yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep.
What did the humans give?
The humans gave a scalp. You want to hear the human story?
Yes, please.
All right.
Because all of the animals, they're giving a whole library to the humans.
Yeah.
They're making a treaty with them. And what do the humans contribute? And what is the agreement? That's what I want.
All right. Okay.
And we'll get back to Madge, but this stuff's important.
Yep. There are 2 different human contributions into the Beaver Bundle. Both of them are scalps. One of them comes from the Scabby Round Robe story, but the scalp is not really the important thing that comes from that story, so I'm not going to tell that story, even though that's one of the scalps that you'll find in the Beaver Bundle, and some other stuff from Scabby Round Robe as well. This is another whole a big story that happened that brought a whole bunch of new things into the Beaver Bundle. There's several you can imagine thousands of years of history, how many times your main corpus has to change and have resolution.
There are still core moments. There are heartbeats over those 1,000 years where there's something very core that is transferred.
Yeah.
Or included.
Yeah. Yeah. So Apikominim, Scabby Round Robe, is one of these stories that some of that stuff comes from. So some Beaver Bundles have scalps in them associated with Scabby Round Robe. There's a other scalp in there in some of the bundles, and Mahoney in my bundle has this scalp. and it comes from a story about Sipistopuka, owl child, who was a Picani. Um, One of the Blackfoot tribes is called Picani. That was his tribe. He had this dream. This is way back, you know. Um, I don't even want to try to imagine how many years ago it was or whatever. But he had a dream that him and his close brothers and cousins and stuff went and really super successfully raided their southern neighbor, the Pitsiksinaquans, the Snake People, the Shoshone.
Mm.
And so he convinced his brothers and cousins, let's do this. Let's go down there. I know it's gonna be like we're gonna come home so rich. We're gonna steal all their stuff. We're gonna get all these, valors and stuff. Let's go do this. So they all start following him. They pack up and they're going on a multi-day mission to go down there and try to actualize this dream. But every time they sleep, and they travel mostly at night, hey?
Hmm.
When they're going on these raids, they travel at night and they sleep in the day in the like usually in the thickets, find some coulee with like really close choke cherries or down by the river with close willow and stuff. And you just sleep during the day and keep cover and then travel by night. Make your way to the enemy and then or to I don't know, it's not even enemy in Blackfoot, it's more like opponent, because all like the language is all in gaming.
Mm.
And there was a system, a point system, which I don't have all in my head, but killing people was low on the point system.
Yeah.
High on the point system is taking away vital resources. Take away namachgan is what they call a coup in Blackfoot, but that's literally acquiring a gun. Like taking their whatever that is, whether it was a bow before and whatever, taking their weaponry, taking their stuff that they use to retaliate against you and to hunt. Like it's all like back then it's all very utilitarian too, because the more resources you got, the bigger guy you were. Like especially once the horses came in. Hey, horses really changed everything. I think this story is like way pre-horse though.
It's certainly pre-gun by a long shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, these guys are going down south to raid their enemy, to raid their opponent, the Snake People. And every time they sleep, the brothers, the cousins and stuff, they start having their own dreams. And their dreams aren't as nice.
Wow.
They're fearful dreams.
Wow.
They see themselves dying. They see bad things happen, or they see, they're scared when they wake up from their dreams. And so pretty soon, like, a couple days in, people start turning back. They're not going to participate, and his closest cousins and brothers stick with him further. But eventually them too, they're all having dreams that are ominous and bad, and they're like, hey man, like we want to trust your dream and everything, but like we got to trust ours too. And so So they back off, and he's like, all right, go ahead, you know, my my relatives are not worth anything. Can I have some food? Go. I have a dog here that's I'm pet sitting,
Ah, yes.
who's been here now 24 hours and not eaten.
Yeah, you can't tell where the owner is, if he gets to go home, if he's coming. Why is this happening?
Yeah,
All
he's
this.
right stressed out. Right
Yeah.
stressed out. There we go. You're gonna eat, aren't you? There you go, Jenny.
Oh.
Um. Oh, where were we?
His cousins have turned back.
Oh yeah,
Now he's on his own.
yeah. Owl child. He's on his own, and then a storm approaches. He's decided in his mind he's going to go down to the opponents, and he's just going to go right nuts on them and do, you know, like he's probably going to die. It's a suicide mission. He's going to let them take his life because he's so like him, you know, humiliated and upset with his relatives for not continuing with him. Anyway, the storm is coming, and he finds a crag in some rock in the coulees to climb into. And you can go deep into this crag to get out of the weather, but it gets, dark in there. Pitch black dark in the cave. And in that cave, he's kind of like, the storm is raging and shit outside, and he's just kind of like hanging out in the cave. But then he bumps into something and he starts feeling it. And then he realizes there's another fucking guy in here, like standing right here, and his heart's racing. He doesn't know who the heck this is. Could be an enemy, anything. He starts like frantically kind of feeling this guy, because he's already touched him and felt him up a little bit, to like before he came to the realization that's a fucking person, So he starts touching him a little bit more to try to figure out, like, does he have anything on him that I can tell what kind of person this is? Something like symbols and shit, and he can't find nothing in the dark. And so ultimately he takes a risk, and he goes like this, and he rubs his fist on the guy's cheek like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the sign for Be Gunny, which is his tribe. He was telling him who he was, which is a huge risk. Then the other guy puts his finger on Owl Child's chest and does a zigzag across his chest. And he's telling him he's Bitsiksina, the snake person. That's their opponent. And so, again, like, Owl Child's heart starts racing because he thinks this is it. Like, any second he's getting killed, or kill or get killed, But he doesn't move on the guy. And then they keep trying to like use sign language on each other's bodies to try to start communicating things. And when the storm lets up, they go outside and they go full into plain sign language, which was the lingua franca of the time, And they realized that they actually have super similar stories. This guy was coming up north to raid them with his brothers and all that shit, and his guys turned back and chickened out and all that.
Mhm.
And
They're
like,
mirroring.
yeah, they're very
Mirrors.
much mirroring, and
Yeah.
there isn't really any big difference between them, so to speak. You know, the symbols, that couldn't even show up in the cave. What the fuck do those really mean? Why are we hanging on to those? We're not really very different. Um, they start like they start a real conversation. Maybe we shouldn't be opponents, you
Ah,
know.
yeah.
So they put together a scheme. Each one is going to cut um, a little piece of scalp, a braid like off the other guy, and take it home and tell this story about how they went, and even though everybody abandoned, they went there and they fought the enemy and all that shit. Um and and then they knew that people would question, because they're each missing a braid too, right?
Of course.
So they devised a plan to bring their people back to meet at this certain spot under the auspices that they were going to prove they're going to show them the dead body of the enemy, you know. And so they each went and actualized this and brought their people back. And there's a whole long story about the kind of interaction that happened there. But suffice to say, they ended up, the two guys, Owl Child and the uh, and the uh, and the Snake Man, they traded lives. They traded lodges. They traded wives. They traded everything. They just entered into each other's tribe and took on that person's identity.
Ah,
And then they encouraged people to camp together for a little while at the end of that summer and make relationships, which they did. Everybody was getting along. Many long-term relationships were made. Hold on, I gotta call in my dogs. Let's go, Jenny. Po. Jenny's the Dalmatian.
hmm.
She ate
Ah,
and then wanted to go out. That's good. She's been going out, but she hadn't eaten yet. She'd been too stressed. Po. Jenny, let's go in. Come on. So a lot of good relationships were made. And at the end of the season, kind of when like they had to, like, you can't camp as one big camp for very long, That's berry harvest time that you
right.
do
When
that.
there's enough, only when there's enough resources to feed everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, so as winter's approaching, you got to break up into smaller camps, and it sucks for everybody because they like to be together.
Ah,
Um, so so the people in this new camp were kind of grieving that they had to leave each other. The teenagers were especially having difficulty dealing with the younger people, having difficulty dealing with the separation. And so while everybody was already starting to move out, they kind of lingered on and played some more games together. And one of the games that they played was a hoop and arrow game, where you throw this ring, and it's divided into different segments and stuff, and then you try to pass a dart through it, an arrow through it.
ah,
And depending on what part of the hoop you hit, you get different points and that kind of thing.
hmm.
At the end of the game, two boys seem to be tied, but they disagreed that they were tied. They each thought they actually beat the other, and they start arguing about it. And in the end, the big gunny boy picked up a weapon, I think a stick, something simple, and killed that snake boy, the younger guy. And that rekindled the whole feud that they had supposedly overcome. And so for me, like, there's, and this is what, like, we have a dance in the Beaver Bundle that has that ring that they played with, and the scalp, and it involves the lynx, which is the embodiment of Morning Star. The lynx dances that scalp around the hoop and stick, and but the song that goes with it is a song about, it's now used as a victory song, but it's a song that says, the snake man, he cried anyway. And it's a weird thing, like, I get from this story, like, there's very core, like, basic anthropological stuff that I get from this story. Like, we are all human. We are all, like, basically the same in all of our motivations and the ways that we carry out things and all of this. We're at core, we're all the same. But these symbols divide us, if, like, the visual thing, first of all, and if we can take out that element at all, if we can take out that element, we can get much closer. But then the next divisory issue is distance.
It reminds me of the divisions in the hoop. I'm not saying it's important. Also,
it might very well be.
We got about 1 minute, and then I have to record again.
Okay.
Can you hold your thought here?
Well, this is basically the end of this story. The Owl Child. That's the Owl Child story.
And that's what the Owl Child's scalp in the bundle.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, no, his enemy's scalp. Well, his
opponent's snake boy's scalp.
The snake boy's scalp with the hoop. Sometimes also with the dart. But
what does it mean? The snake boy cried anyway. The snake boy died.
He cried anyway. The snake man, because when he was being killed, like, in the coup games, the point systems, if you're getting killed and you cry, that's not good.
Okay, we have to stop there. Hold that thought. I'll be back. Okay? Sorry. All right, we're back.
Okay, I want to go back to your question. What did the humans contribute to the bundle?
And what was the agreement? What were the agreements also?
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go.
Okay, good.
Because I recognize, I was thinking in terms of the tangible bundle, which would be the scalps. Like, the humans' robe is in there too, in essence. But yeah, the agreement, in, like, what happened was there wasn't going to be an agreement. Like, the animals had stolen this human's wife. This human, Matsuapi, the Whitegrass was his name, which is still a family name here. um, they had stolen the animals had stolen his wife, the beavers in particular, charmed her, taken her away, and he was left with an infant son who had no way to feed.
Ah.
And he in turn stole the beaver's favorite grandchild, young pup, albino pup, special pup, and was holding it in ransom. And there was some negotiations that took place, but ultimately then the beavers called on all of their, like all the animals that rely on them, which are a lot of different animals. In one way or another, they're connected with the beavers, and so they called on all of their friends to come and participate. And they brought their bundle and the guy's wife back, and transferred him their bundle, which was 7 predators that were dangerous to beavers: bears, wolves, eagles. There's 7 of them. Mountain. There's 7 of them in that original bundle, and and because Matoyapi, he had these, like, they weren't dreams. I mean, he cried himself to sleep every night without his young wife. And then this old man was coming to see him. He didn't know where the old man came from. Spirit being was coming to see him and tell him, Moppy, holy, the old man was telling him, your wife isn't dead. This is what's happened. You know, she got too lonely because he was a ridiculously skilled trapper, but it required that he spent all his time with nature. And he was not spending the time with his girl, and he wouldn't let her bring her sister. She was like, can I bring my sister over to the camp, because she could keep me company? No, too many people up here, spook the animals. Got to keep a low profile, you know. Can I go, like, stay with my parents and stuff while you're up here? Visit with my parents and their clan. Hey, I want you here with me. I want you here with me. And so she got, bored and lonely, and the beavers noticed this, and then there was a bachelor beaver that kind of, like, transformed himself to look like a handsome young man, and charmed her to go with him, and eventually led her. What's up, Jenny? You want to go out? I think they think there's something outside. Oh. All the dogs are barking and stuff. It's okay, you guys. No, there's nothing out there. Look, I'll look out the door. See, look, I'm looking out. There's nobody. Just a snowy neighborhood. All right, go to bed. You guys, chill out. So there wasn't going to be a much of a negotiation because um like they brought this bundle to him that they considered very sacred, and they brought his wife back and they were like, all we want is our pup.
Uh,
And he refused, and he refused based on what this old man, the spirit man, had been telling him. Hey, um he held on to that pup, and then this Emmonisi, the otter, addressed the other animals and said, at the nerve of this human being. Mani Toto, yeah. They only just arrived here. And he's making like, your most sacred bundle's not enough for him. Look at the sky. And this is where right came into the story. It was through the otter. The otter was ready to dance, and he is like, look at this character sitting here. He's soft, he's slow, he's weak, can't fly, can't run worth a damn, can't fend for himself. Why don't we just, yeah, why don't we just all gang up on him and eat him? Be done with it, you know? And this is when the elder beaver kind of stepped in because the animals were considering it. It was an obvious solution. He wasn't accepting their offer. It was a good offer. Fuck this guy. And who is this guy? Like, he's got, nothing. So, but the elder beaver said, okay, yeah, we can, like, it'd be easy to kill this guy. You're right. It's nothing, like, as far as like a physical challenge to us, it's nothing. We'll kill this guy like a heartbeat. But the other humans are going to learn about this.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other humans.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to learn about this because when you do something like that, you can't keep it secret. It's going to come out.
Yeah.
So we could go that route and be done with this tonight, right here, right now. But that's not really what I called you here for. Like, I need you guys' help. I think rather than establishing that as our future in relation to these humans, these people, we should maybe help them compensate for some of their shortcomings. They're not really adapted to live here. We've been living here a long time. Give them some of our knowledge about how to live here and live here well in relation to each other, how to, like, all the core stuff, hey, how to live here. It's a way of life in this place. And if we teach them that, then in turn they will have respect for us, and they won't just kill us because they're afraid when they see us. They'll kill us, some of us, to eat us, but they'll have respect for us. We've lived here a lot longer. All of our the things that we've learned, estomato, we've embodied it. They haven't embodied any. They're born and they don't have any of that instinct stuff. So we'll share with them some of what we have, and they practice that. In the future, they'll have that, and will live respectfully. So that was what the humans ultimately signed up. Well, that was what the animals ultimately signed on for. Matoyapi, you don't really get a sense of whether he was a philosopher or not. Or a politician or anything. He was a trapper.
Right.
But he was told by this old man in these encounters not to give that pup up, not to agree to the whole thing until there was a sign that he would recognize that it was okay to do that. Hey. And that did come at the end, because all the animals gave things, gave their robes, gave their songs. And then the old beavers, again, he's like, okay, like, look at this giant bundle. And we've given you so much of our knowledge and stuff, right? All I want is my pup. And Matoyapi didn't feel like he'd seen what he needed to see, or like whatever was supposed to be his cue. He said, there's still people here who haven't given anything. And there was these two people, like each one beside the door. Two, like, everybody that came to that transformed themselves to look humanesque. Like, that's part of the story too. If you really tell the story in a good Blackfoot way, you describe it and describe the different animal beings that came in there, but they tried to make themselves look humanesque, and they were grotesque. They freaked out Matoyapi so much he couldn't hardly bear to look at them, because they were so, like, frightening. And there was these two that were on either side of the lodge door that had these robes pulled up over their heads, like buffalo robes. And those two haven't, I don't know what's going on there. They haven't given anything to the bundle. And who are they? And then they pulled back their robes, and the one was that old man that had been coming to him in the night, and then the other one was an old woman, and they started singing their songs to give to the bundle. And when they started singing their songs, then it became immediately apparent that this is the sun and the moon.
Natotsi and Kokomakit song.
Yeah. And they gave a lot of songs. And then when they were done, Kokomakit, the night sun, opened the lodge door and called in this boy, who brought in these two animals that nobody had ever seen. One of them was black and one of them was white. The male was black, the female was white. And he led these two animals in, and he said that this is he started singing songs. And this was the Morning Star, of course. And what he gave to the bundle were the dogs. Um, the lynx tail is also like the actual person who embodies the morning star in the ceremony wears the lynx tail. But he brought domesticated dogs. Nobody had ever known them before, and he said this black dog, this male dog, will haul your bundle when you move from camp to camp. You make a travois, and he'll carry your bundle. This female dog is going to make more dogs, and you're going to give these dogs to the humans. These dogs are going to protect all the humans. They're going to look out for you whenever any danger is approaching. They're going to alert you. They're going to get between you and the danger.
Mm.
And that's what he gave. And that was when Matoyapi said that he had got what was needed. And he agreed to the treaty, and he would share with the humans what what had gone on, and he would change his name from Matoyapi to Natosi Inipi. The sun came down. Brings down the sun, basically. Yeah. Natosi Inipi, which became another famous name for beaver men. Now, Alan, my elder's grandfather was was the last that I know. Not Dotsi and Ipi. The last brings down the sun, but he won't be the last. There'll be others. Yeah. So that's what the humans gave to the bundle. So that's kind of like that's more than I expected to talk about what a bundle is. But do you have any questions? Anything you want me to go into?
Yeah,
I was talking about Harvard. I was trying to tell a Harvard story.
I know. We're going to get back to Madge. But the human gave the beaver pup back.
The human gave the beaver pup back. The human gave the human gave like ennakotis, like mutual respect. Like before, this is a guy who his whole operation, his whole life had been, I'm finding the fanciest looking animals, killing them, preparing their skins, and selling it to people, trading it, bartering it, and stuff. Like all he was a killing machine, and very inserted into the natural world. And it wasn't, for food. It was just for things like robes and stuff, just for getting the fanciest, the albinos and the mixed color patterns and different animals and things, that's what he was known for. He was the trapper extraordinaire. That was the original Beaver Man.
And he gave the pup, and he gave respect. What about the contributions of the sun and moon? These are not his contributions.
Nope.
Those
Oh,
come in on the side of the,
those were things he was waiting for. He wasn't.
right. Those came in on the side of what the animals would offer to
Yep.
him,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So the pup and mutual respect, which isn't minor, not trivial. Anything else?
No,
Ah,
that's basically it. The mutual respect is the big thing. The pup is just a symbol, just like his son, who is not able to feed without his mom. Keeping the beaver pup from his parents is endangering the future generations. This is
yes,
what we're talking about.
yes, yes.
They're just symbols,
I,
future generation symbols.
yes, yes, yes. The children.
Yeah. So in order to save the children, the future generations, we must agree to have a mutual respect where we can coexist,
Yes.
us with the animals. And the mainstream culture today does not have
No.
that.
It's more than that, though, too, unless I don't understand something or I'm making something
can,
up.
can I go on a tangent?
Yes.
A little one? I work with rattlesnakes.
Ah,
That's probably out of my income, my annual income, probably a tenth of it comes from wrangling rattlesnakes in the heart of Blackfoot territory in Lethbridge, where I live. This is like the nexus of this is you know this is the heart of Blackfoot territory, and there's a huge rattlesnake population, prairie rattlesnakes, and I'm the guy that gets called when a rattlesnake shows up in somebody's yard, and the human being needs something to be done about it.
ah,
Like you're not allowed here to kill snakes. It's against the law. I know in the States you're still allowed to kill snakes almost
yes.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Here in Alberta, where I live, you are not allowed to kill any of our natural snake species. You will get up to a $30,000 fine and 5 years in prison.
Wow.
It's a criminal offense.
Hmm.
So given that you're not allowed to kill a snake, if you can't just coexist with one real easy, then you end up calling the rattlesnake guy, and that's me. I took on that position because I've been around snakes all my life, but also because of the Beaver Bundle, because I thought this was a way to kind of honor my role as a beaver man. And the rattlesnakes, this is why I want to go on this tangent. The rattlesnakes I find are the best symbol in my mind of that treaty that was made
Yes, yes, I know where you're going, and please keep going there.
with the Beaver Bundle
Yes,
with whitegrass,
yes.
because
Why are they the best symbol?
because there are venomous snakes all over the earth, but only here in the Americas do you find this thing called a rattlesnake. And a rattlesnake co-evolved with human presence here. It's not a old thing having rattles on a snake. It's something that co-evolved with humans. And I think, if it was a situation where cultures demonized, so to speak, the snakes, like the
Not
mainstream.
even so to speak, just straight up demonize them.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously Christian culture does, but
Right.
there's other cultures that just are snake haters, but don't necessarily demonize them. They're just like, because they don't have rattlesnakes. They
Yeah.
have these other snakes that just bite them with no warning.
Right.
We have rattlesnakes. Why do we have rattlesnakes? Because we agreed to coexist with the animals. in all of the animals, including the rattlesnakes. There's no way that rattle evolves in a cultural situation with humans that are going to respond negatively to that rattle and just kill the snake when they're warned. That rattle only evolves if it has the effect that it needs to have, which is to say, leave me alone, and people, back off. Um, that doesn't happen everywhere else in the world, because everywhere else in the world they don't have this agreement, maybe. you know
Yeah. So let me rephrase what you said.
and now, um we've had hundreds of years now of a different cultural influence here in the Americas, and we are starting to see pockets of rattlesnakes that are changing. There's a Mojave rattlesnake, where a lot of the young snakes are being born with a crooked tail that can't rattle.
Ah,
And there are prairie rattlesnakes, the same species that are here in Blackfoot territory, just a couple provinces east of here in Manitoba. There's a pocket of prairie rattlesnakes where the newborns are being born without a nub to form a rattle on.
ah,
And herpetologists do believe that this is because of the persecution of the rattlesnake,
oh,
the snake in general.
yeah.
And that, now having the rattle is evolutionarily or natural selection wise not a good thing here because of the cultural system of the humans.
In other words, so the rattle, where it doesn't warn the humans off successfully, goes away.
Yeah, I mean, if the rattle goes off
You
and
kill the
people say,
snake.
"Oh, there's a snake there, kill it,"
Right. Yeah.
then the rattle goes away.
Yeah. Over time.
Yeah, over time, that's the way natural selection works.
Right.
Like Blackfoot knowledge is very aligned with some of the core mainstream science and ecology knowledge too. And natural selection is not it all plays in there. Like, um, I think that's why we have the rattlesnakes here, is because natural selection playing into a eco-social uh, situation, a context where there's an agreement. We're not just going to kill something just because it's here, just because it
Yeah.
shows up. There are Blackfoot protocols around, like if a bird enters into your house, flies in on its own kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, people would kill it, and I think that's just because of the situation with, if you're living in a teepee, which is always open, it's never entirely closed, and you start and you give grant to any birds to come in, you're gonna have a problem. Same with anything. Like if like there is a beaver story about a mouse that started taking up residence in this guy's bundle, and he had a conflict. Like, I'm not supposed to have a problem with the animals,
Right.
but here's this mouse dug into the side of my bundle. What do I do? And he ultimately decided to let the mouse live there, and the mouse would go and raid other people's tobacco stores in the night and bring them back to his bundle. And so it turned out being a good thing. There's some songs associated with the mouse. But I myself experimented as a beaver man, letting mice come into my modern house was not a good idea.
They
And I
did
think
not bring you tobacco.
no. And I think in the past, letting birds into your teepee was not a good idea. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. But other than that kind of a thing, that little space that's a controlled space,
Right.
the little yeah. Other than that little space, we're not allowed to kill things other than for food. You know?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Or, like there's plants that are used for different things and stuff, of course. But you have to have a good reason to be taking out some life, not just because you're afraid of it or just because it's a eyesore or whatever,
Mhm.
like what we do
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to recap this, and then we're going to start again.
Okay.
Uh, the rattlesnakes are a good example of the agreement because,
They are an excellent example of the agreement because they have rattles.
right. And so they could, if they don't have rattles, just simply wait till you get close enough to them. Maybe you don't notice them, maybe you're afraid of them, whatever, then just bite you. But because they have rattles, they alert you and they
They've got
ask.
they've got another step, like all of the venomous snakes. Their very first self-defense is camouflage.
Yes.
So they will just sit very still and hope that you just pass by.
Right.
But if that doesn't work and you don't just pass by and you're going to injure them, threaten them, if you come, I mean, you have to come within 4 or 5 inches of a snake to get bit in
Right.
reality.
Yeah.
So if you come that close to it, that means its life is threatened and it's going to bite you. Now, a rattlesnake has one more step in mitigating that
Mm-hmm.
conflict
Mm-hmm.
that you don't find anywhere else. You find it in North America because I think this is the agreement in North America that we're not just going to kill each other for being there. And then under that circumstance, the rattle can evolve.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that circumstance, then all it does is alert the human before it gets bit to the snake's presence, and the human hates the snake and kills the snake.
Yes. All right, let me try to recap this one more time. So the rattlesnake is an example of the agreement. It gives you a chance to remember to respect the animal because it warns you, audibly warns you, right? In a way that everything recognizes this sound. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Very distinctive sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so where that treaty has been well kept, where that agreement has been kept, the rattlesnakes keep their rattles.
Mm-hmm.
In some places where that agreement is not kept by the humans, the rattlesnakes begin to lose their rattles.
That's right.
Now there's no more warning. And the first thing, the camouflage, turns out to be very problematic for the human because the human will die.
Yeah. The human can't see them.
Right.
Yeah.
Blind, essentially.
Yeah.
All right, hold that thought. One more session. I'll be back.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep. Sounds good.
So we're returning from part 4. We've just been talking about the rattlesnakes. We're returning to part 4. I just want to mention something that occurred to me. It's almost as if there's an intergenerational transfer between the rattlesnakes, and they transfer the rattle to their children. But then if the agreement is broken, that transfer stops happening. This is just in my mind.
Something happens with the body because maybe it's just like if I just follow a natural selection, um, is there's just always a variety of bodies, and you may or may not be born without the little nub to make your rattle work, or your tail might be angled. I mean, what they're seeing now in those two populations, the Mojave and the Manitoba prairie rattlesnake, are um, what they would now consider mutations.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, that
All
are
right.
that, you know.
All right. So do we here return to Madge and Harvard?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So Madge Walters. I wish I had a photo of her. I've never seen her.
Hmm.
I would like to see her. Um, in my stories earlier, I mentioned Marlene Walters, I think, who was on the Blackfoot Tribal Business Council, who I was working with the Land Consolidation Act. I know sometimes people get weird, like, wasn't that the counselor you're working with? No. Madge Walters is a different Walters than the Marlene. There is a family of people on the Blackfeet Reservation named Walters that are not related to her. I don't know where they got their Walter name, but it wasn't through Madge. Madge was in San Francisco. She's very wealthy, um, or at least in Blackfoot terms, she was,
Ah,
because she was able to use those three young people to buy a lot of things, and she was trying to overcome her cancer.
ah,
She was fully like interested. Like she didn't want just the bundles, she wanted the story, she wanted as much as she could understand. She was trying to use these things to help herself.
wow.
And she died. But when she died, she had a considerable collection of Blackfoot bundles and other individual sacred items and stuff. Um, a whole like, I mean, I had a thick pile of correspondence between her and the three young people out here
Ah,
that went
yeah,
into
I'm
detail.
looking at a letter from her
Yeah.
in which the final paragraph is she's asking someone about artifacts, or they're asking her, and the final paragraph is, I do not wonder that you feel you cannot pay $600 for the blood bundle. I have never yet seen one that I think would be worth that amount.
$600. My goodness, dude. That's ridiculous. Okay, to put that in perspective, when I transferred into to be a beaver man, I was poor. And I took a whole year, my wife and I, well, about 8 months. And everything we could get, we put away. Um, and we bought things and we put away money and we bought things to give away to the people that would come to our transfer. And our family members came forward. Well, I should say hers, not mine. Um, my wife's uncle came forward and gave like, gave me like $1,000.
We should bear in mind, though, that in 1947, that's approximately equivalent to $8,000 today.
Okay, I think I paid about equivalent to about 40 to 50,000 today. I paid enough for an undergraduate education
Ah,
to get the Beaver Bundle transferred to me.
okay.
Um, and that's what people normally pay to enter into like one of the bigger bundles or sacred societies here. Sometimes like it's not always like it's not all at once. Like we probably put 20,000 into our original transfer.
Hmm.
Um, but then we were hosting the ceremonies in Waterton Park. We had to buy a $2,000 teepee. We had to haul everything out there to do our ceremonies, feed everybody. Like in the time that um uh that I was running those ceremonies, I definitely spent $40,000 to $50,000
Oh,
on ceremony stuff with our bundle to do, and that's all the training time. Like when you have the bundle, that's your training time.
hmm.
When you get rid of it, when you transfer it on, then there's kind of a relax period most times. For beaver bundles, there's no relax. Like the other bundles in the system, usually you have them maybe 3-4 years, transfer them, another carekeeper, and you get a break while that next carekeeper's taking care of them, and the one after that will come approach you as an elder to teach them, and then you have to go back into actual working with it and that kind of thing. And as an elder, I mean, even though you're making like it's all this stuff is sacrifice stuff, and you're sacrificing a lot, and it's because you're learning a lot, and you're getting a lot of social um cachet with it as well, you know. Um,
But it's a huge responsibility to be the keeper of a living library.
yeah,
Huge. Like
yeah,
unimaginable.
it's in me, and
Yes.
that's the thing. Like it's not written down,
Yes.
you know. It's in me.
Yes.
You become the living library,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and you pay for that.
Mm.
Um, but that's what I mean. It makes you a resource. It's an investment in a way, you know. Um, because you do like that's how the elders are ultimately like taken care of, you know. Like
Wow.
they don't got work their whole lives because they got like this isn't the Western system. There's no fucking retirement, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And so it provides a way for the elders to be taken care of because they have this role, and the role is not merely valuable monetarily, there's reverence for the role.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
So
Harvard and Madge.
okay, so Madge, she died. She died with a considerable Blackfoot collection, all of which her daughter sold to the Denver Art Museum. Now the Denver Art Museum comes in possession. I mean, they paid. I don't know what they paid for it. I probably got the paperwork on it.
Hmm.
Mahoney does anyway. My wife, my ex-wife. Um, Mahoney has the paperwork for it in our records. What the Denver Art Museum paid for it, because I have all that shit. I got everything. Um, but basically they've museums that try to create ethnographic collections are basically most of the, or at least at that time. Today is a weird thing because museums are just trying to salvage themselves, and this not going to happen. But in those times, when Madge Walter passed on, this would have been like probably the 1950s, I think, if I remember correct. Um, the museums were still like, if they had ethnographic collections, they wanted a good representation of each culture. What they got from Madge Walters was 5 representations of Blackfoot culture. Because they had 5 or more of everything.
Oh my gosh.
She had so much stuff, dude. And so Denver Art Museum started selling it and trading it. They were like, okay, we got a Blackfoot Beaver Bundle, Thunderpipe, Hornspipe Bundle, Motokeek Society Bundle, so the Smithsonian. We're looking at, you got a Klamath this and a Kalapuya that, and that we don't have, to make our collection more complete. Let's do a trade. So Madge Walter's collection went all over the fucking place to all the major museums. Denver Art Museum kept a core, their little Noah's Ark of Blackfoot culture, and then everything they didn't need a second version of, they sent everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Beaver Bundle that I found in the Peabody Museum in Harvard was one of these from Madge Walters. Harvard didn't have that piece to their collection yet. So they had got it from the Madge Walters collection at Denver Art Museum. And they got it for something like $350.
Right.
But Madge had got it for, I think, $50.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see here a kind of a terrifying trend that's just going to continue, where the indigenous people are so poor that they're selling their sacred history to the colonials for a pittance.
Well, that was happening. That's not anymore.
Yes.
Okay. And I have to kind of explain this too, because when I say it's like 1950 in the United States, that 1940s and 1950s, when Madge Walters came up here, it was 1940, early 1940s. And she kept collecting into the 1950s, and then she died. And then it went to Denver Art Museum, and then from there it dispersed everywhere else. Now, when I'm talking about the 1940s and 50s in Canada, it's a different situation than in the United States with Indians and stuff. All right. In the United States in 1924, there was something called the Indian Reorganization Act, a national policy that went through that drew an end to the era supposedly of forced assimilation, that said, you can keep your culture now. We want diversity here in the United States. You can keep your culture. We're gonna remove the residential schools from your reserves. We are going to remove the federal Indian agents from your reserves. We are going to let you make your own band councils to control your communities. we are going to let you control your own schools and all that stuff. And you can leave your reserve and participate in the national economy if you want. And in fact, we will offer you incentive and move you with, we'll help you get established in either San Francisco or Chicago. My grandma went to Chicago.
Uh,
Um, but this was in 1924 in the United States. The same kind of federal legislation did not happen here in Canada until 1968.
uh,
So 1970s was the big time of change here, 1960s, 70s, where like uh, the language was lost.
mm,
I mean, that happened in the 20s, 30s in the States with most of the tribes through the Indian Reorganization Act. Again, it's the economic incentive or the economic incentive. You can come off reserve and make some money.
yeah, if you want to come live in a city.
Yeah, come live in the city and you got to learn
Right.
English. You got to
Yeah,
learn English.
right.
That happened in the 20s there. It happened in the 60s here. So it's a different timeline.
Yeah.
So when Swims Under brought Madge from Montana into Alberta, he is bringing her into a world that was 3, 4 decades late from what she's used to.
I see. Yeah. I mean, for her, it's a treasure trove, but it's a terrifying situation
Yeah,
for the indigenous people.
yeah, a lot of shit was lost to her, and these young guys.
They don't even know what they're selling.
No, and they didn't give a fuck.
Right.
That
They want
yeah.
some whiskey or whatever, I'm guessing.
Well,
Some
those
food.
guys, they're just trying to get. But like, if you watch like a really good, if you want to look at some, go to the what is it, the fucking Canadian Film Board website and watch Circle of the Sun and then Standing Alone and then The Last Roundup. And these are three different films, bio documentaries on the late Pete Standing Alone, who made the first film, Circle of the Sun, when he was about 25. And then the second film, Standing Alone, when he was about 50. And then The Last Roundup when he's about 75. And you'll see when he's 25 years old, he thinks the Sundance, he thinks all the ceremony stuff is just for the old people. He doesn't think it's for him.
Yeah.
He thinks it's for the old people, and he thinks it's going away. And the whole documentary is about how it's going away. Like, oh, this is it's gone, right? This is the last of this fucking thing.
The
But
whole way of life is going away.
supposedly,
Yeah.
but 25 years later, he's becoming the elder,
Nice.
or he's in the society. He's in the core of the societies 25 years later and stuff. He's living it. His parents have died and ricocheted him into a situation where he suddenly respects what this tradition has to offer.
Mm.
His parents died on the highway. And 25 years after that, he's the elder of the horns. Like he's one of the top two elders. And they do the third film. Narcissus did that film. But and then I interviewed him at the we had a private screening of The Last Roundup, his third film, at Red Crow College, with the guys from the Canadian Film Board, and they asked just like 3 or 4 of us to to give him questions. And I asked him, because he was 80 years old at the time, and he was really in good physical standing, you know, like he was still like his mind was all there, his body was still, pretty good. Like he wasn't like he was standing straight and walking good, and he was healthy and skinny and all that shit. So I told him, Pete, my question, what's your secret? You know,
Mm.
you're 80 years old. You look so good. Girls still like you. What's up? How'd you get that way? He said there's 3 secrets. So first of all, you're only human, and every once in a while you got to let yourself indulge. He was talking specifically about beer.
Mm.
Hey, no, nothing at the door. Just standing up. He's like, you can buy a case of beer once a week and get hammered, get really drunk, and enjoy yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you don't do it every day.
Ah.
Lesson number 2. You got to change wives every, 5-6 years. He had changed wives several times in his lifetime. And he kind of jokingly said, I've been with Betty now more than 10 years. I think this is the end.
No.
It was. But number 3, stick with the young people. Don't worry about the old people. They're going out.
No.
Forget about those guys. Stick with the young people.
Ah.
And that was something that I know was not bullshit at all, that he learned from his horses, because he'd expressed it to me in other ways many times. But he's basically like, if I want to work on something new, I don't work with my old horses.
Ah.
I raise the young horses into it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we were going on a journey to learn something about Harvard.
Well, we
And
learned about Madge Walters a little bit. Yeah. It's
yeah,
Harvard that I want to get back to. That's
yes.
the core story. So the Beaver Bundle that was on the accessions list that I received when I went to Harvard the first time, after they kind of like gave me they tried to shake me off, right?
Yeah.
Said you're gonna have to book months in advance and this kind of thing to do research, blah blah blah. And I called their bluff. And they're like, okay, come down. And then they showed me the list that they had of what they had in their collections that were Blackfoot, and a Beaver Bundle was high up on the list, like second to human remains, which they thought we would go after. That's not Blackfoot protocol. Like we just deal with living. The bundles we consider still be living, not the dead.
Yes.
So I went straight after the bundle. that day, looking at the accessions records, taking my notes, all that stuff. And then I went through all their other shit and I looked at everything that they had that day. I just spent the whole day going through their accessions records on everything they had, figured out how they got it, where they got it, how much they paid, what they did, how everything that that I could from everything that they had, I had at that point. So I went home with that information. I was going to enter it into my database that I'm giving to the tribe. And that night, I got a call from George. What's his last name? Horse Capture. He's not Blackfoot. Where is he from? I'm trying to remember. It's from another tribe in Montana. I want to say he's Grovon, but I'm not sure. George Horse Capture. This is the Smithsonian's Indian.
Mm.
And George calls me and says, "Who the fuck are you?" Basically.
Mm.
Not in too much of a different tone than that.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like, "Hey, we got a letter from you at the Smithsonian. I see you've got, I see you've got Earl Old Person's permission and all of this, but I don't know who you are. I don't know what you think you're doing. I think you're probably disempowering the Blackfoot community doing what you're doing. I don't think I'm going to send you any of the Smithsonian's data. I think you can fuck off." This is basically George Horse Capture's message to me. So I went over to my advisor at the University of Massachusetts and told him, I got this weird phone call from George Horse Capture. This is what he said to me. I get it, He's like, "Yeah, I get it too. What do I do about it?" I said, "I don't know. Just leave it for now. I guess I'm not getting Smithsonian stuff or whatever," right? Just kind of left it. A couple days later, I get another phone call, and this is from Joyce Spoonhunter. So Joyce Spoonhunter is the first cousin of Marlene Bear Walters, who was the tribal council member who I was working most closely with on the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council previously. So this is her first cousin. And Joyce calls me. Joyce is the person on the Federal Register for the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And that act just happened to come out like that year. It's 1995. That act was signed. I mean, I guess it was written in 1990, but it was only signed by George Bush in 1995. And I didn't even know shit about it. I mean, I kind of understood about repatriation stuff a little bit from the literature my mentor had shown me, but I didn't know about NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act. I didn't know about repatriations with museums. All I thought was that I was putting together a guide of where the shit was in the world so that people could find stuff to look at, to learn,
Yeah.
And So Joyce calls me up and she's like, she's the person who's listed on the federal register, and she was trained by George Horse Capture at the Smithsonian,
Hmm.
the guy who had called me a few days
Right.
earlier. And so she calls me up and she's upset. She's mad. She's like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but like you're doing my job. Like I'm the person on the federal register for repatriation. I'm supposed to be collecting the inventories for our tribe. And I'm hearing from all these museums that they're getting this inquiry from you. Who are you? What's going on?
Ah.
So I told her, hey, I was on the phone with her. I'm like, hey, man, I'm not trying to step on anybody's feet or anything. I was working with Earl and Marlene, and just trying to pull in inventories from these museums. I don't know anything about this dag press stuff, but let me tell you something. Like within walking distance from me, there's a Beaver Bundle at Harvard's museum. I just was in their accessions the other day. I'll send you all my information about it, but they have a Beaver Bundle right here. And she did a whole 180 on me, like in a heartbeat, and was like, do you think you could go over there and start negotiating to bring it home?
Ah.
And I was like, yep, I think yeah, totally. Right. So, um, so Joyce, uh, Spoon Hunter invited me into repatriation. She was the lead for the Blackfeet Nation on repatriation. She's the only person listed on the federal register for it. And she's the one that said, Ryan, can you go negotiate this? So I did. I contacted Harvard. I said, I'm interested in coming to have a meeting about talking about bringing that beaver bundle out of the museum back to the community. I'm representing the community. And they said, well, we have this new repatriation liaison called Emery Victor Scout. Emery Victor Howe. Sorry, Emery Victor Howe. And she'll help you. So Emery gets in contact with me to schedule a meeting, and she is very, very French.
Mm.
Like overwhelmingly French accent. And I don't know, dude. I was probably 23, 24.
Oh my goodness.
Dealing with a middle-aged, French academic working at Harvard. And I know what the fuck to do. So I bought 2 bottles of wine from the Willamette Valley where I grew up in Oregon. Really good wine.
Ah.
Really good shit. And when I went to Harvard to meet with Anne Marie, I brought this wine as a gift. And she was like, Ryan, do you buy me this wine because I am French? No, are you French? I didn't even know. Somehow or another, I won Anne Marie's heart. I think I don't know. I feel like it was kind of through the wine thing, but that was just a gateway. I think I would have won her anyway. I won her heart, like really won her heart. Like she was in love with me. She was married. but she loved me. And right away she was like, okay, we have to be very careful, you know this music, they're going to try to stop this repatriation, we have to like she started fucking coaching me, dude.
Ah,
This is the angle in the law that they're going to use against you. You have to make sure you craft your argument against this and against this. And she fucking taught me how to craft a repatriation claim to beat Harvard.
wow.
And it was beautiful. Yeah. And they had to go through with it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, this is
it,
where, Harvard School of Law is.
it didn't put her in good terms with the museum.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
They didn't know the full extent of like how she'd help me either, you know.
Right.
They just thought she was the go-between, but she was really like, I would give her, okay, this draft, and she'd be like, oh, look out for that sentence. They're gonna pick that apart. And she really coached me to help me, so where I could fight every other museum after that without a problem. You know,
Wow.
yeah,
There was a transfer there,
there was.
right? She
Yeah,
transferred you the power to fight museums
she
in a
did.
way.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you hold that thought?
Yep.
Okay, I'll be back as soon as the processing is done. So this is actually part 6. And
All
we've
right.
just talked
So,
about her helping you understand how to argue against Harvard, the museum she works for,
yeah,
to succeed in repatriating Blackfoot traditional belongings.
yeah, yeah. So that was Anne-Marie Victor Howe. She helped me out to make sure I had a successfully written claim. Um, the only person who can sign off on that, of course, is Joyce Spoonhunter on the Federal Register. So Harvard wanted, Joyce intended to send a group of elders out here to pick up the bundle.
Hmm.
But Harvard wanted her to come physically view it and sign off. And okay, something about coming back to the categorization of things. We had mentioned something earlier. Um, in Harvard, in the Peabody Museum, the Peabody Museum was, not originally like a cultural museum. I think it was originally a paleontological museum, actually.
Ah,
Um, but it was much more a natural history museum than it was a cultural museum to begin with at Harvard. And all of the Beaver Bundle had been parsed out throughout the storage areas to conform with categories.
oh no.
What I'm
It's like
saying?
dissecting your father and putting
Yeah,
different pieces in different boxes based on which
yeah,
function you think the piece had, or some ridiculous, even worse thing.
yeah. So beaver pelts go over here in their museum storage.
Oh,
Goose loon pelts or whatever go over here. Um, Artifacts, human made things go over here and are separated into all of these different categories. So the Beaver Bundle was spread all over the museum,
oh.
all over the museum.
Was
We had
there a
to,
central index of what the Beaver Bundle originally contained that you could work from?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there was an original inventory. And for the most part, they had all of the things, all of the items of the bundle. What was really missing was this uh, a bag. They call them corn husk bags now, but that's just a colonial era thing. There's a type of a basketry bag, almost like a purse, that was made on the on like just over the mountains from here, Salish, Kootenai, those those areas. It those bags were very complicated to make. It wasn't like, I mean, normal Native American basketry itself is very complex and like God, there's not even a market that really pays what it's worth in the world,
Sure.
for the kind of artistry that goes into normal basketry. But these bags are especially like even a skilled artisan is going to take them a long time to make these bags.
Hmm.
They are tightly woven hemp bags with designs and with dyed designs on them and such. Um, the corn husk bags they're called today. Um, but there was an old, like in the beaver bundles, the corn husk bags. It was a trade item, and obviously like a super luxurious one, and is used to hold your 7 rattles. It's a rattle bag in the beaver bundle.
Hmm.
And so this bundle came to Harvard with one of those bags, but Harvard could not find the bag. And then they let me through the storage with Anne Marie, and we could not find the bag.
Hmm.
So we think the bag's gone from the museum. A lot of things have disappeared in the years from the museum.
Sure.
And we think that's gone. And so we get the rest of it all together in a room and stuff. And they want Joyce to come and identify it. Make sure that's the beaver bundle, sign off on it. She has to physically see it. No bullshit.
Yeah.
But the tribe won't send her. Blackfeet Nation at the time was just not going to invest sending her out there for it.
Meaning they won't pay for it?
They won't pay for her to get a plane ticket and a hotel to come out and do what she needs to do to bring that bundle home.
Oh my
She's,
gosh.
she's the only person on the Federal Register who can do it.
Mm-hmm.
The single only person. And they won't fly her out there to do it.
Wow.
So I fly her out there.
Hmm.
And she stays at my apartment. And we go into a meeting with the director of the museum, whose name I don't even remember as well as Anne Marie Victor Howe. I know her first name, Barbara.
Hmm.
I know that because Anne Marie used to bitch at me all the time about Barbara. Barbara. So I remember her. That's why I think I remember Susan too. But Barbara meets us in this fancy room at a long table, and there's art paintings of all of these like Harvard presidents or something
Right.
around the room. And me and Joyce are there, sitting across the long table from Anne Marie, Victor Howe, and Barbara. And Barbara says, "You have to appreciate this is Harvard." She was British. I don't know if she has a
Right.
good British accent.
Right.
But in her British accent, she said, "You have to appreciate this is Harvard University." That
Hmm.
was her opening line. And Joyce retorted with not a fucking delay. "You need to appreciate I'm from the Blackfeet Nation, and our men are ready to come over here on horseback and take this fucking bundle back." You know, she didn't say fucking, but
Right.
she said, we're gonna come over here and take it. We don't care about Harvard, she said.
No.
Means nothing to us.
Yeah.
And that's where we started that day.
Wow.
But we just had a duty to do. Like the process had already been, like the legal argument, I had already sealed it, dude. I'd already sealed it. It just had to be signed off. I made it happen. I fucking brought her there and housed her and rode her to the museum and rode her to the airport and got her off back home and all that shit to sign off on that beaver bundle. But a month later, a group of elders showed up in Boston.
Hmm.
I thought that they would know what they were there for. Nope. This group that showed up, they were on a tour. This was a group of elders from all four of the different Blackfoot tribes. So it included Carol Murray from Scapi Picani, the Southern Blackfoot in Montana, and Tom Black Weasel from Scapi Picani in Montana. It included Alan Pard from Apatosi Picani in Alberta. It included Frank Weaselhead, Martin Heavyhead, who would become my father-in-law, Narcissus Blood, who would become my best friend for 2 decades, Les Healy, Annabelle Crossbeard Wolf, Alvine Mountain Horse from the Bloods. Do we have anyone from Siksika? I don't think we did. All right. So it was only 3 of the 4 tribes represented, but they all came in. They flew in and they were on tour. They were going to Chicago and then Boston and then Washington, D.C. Or no, Boston was their last place. I think they just went to Chicago and Boston that trip.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'll tell you the Washington trip because I was there actually. But yeah, they went to Chicago and then to Boston, and they just thought that they were going to be touring the museum.
Really?
Joyce never told them that they were picking up a bundle. Like, I don't know what the fuck, really, myself. a lot of I don't want to talk bad about Joyce, but anyway, it was weird to me that that I had to fly her there. It was weird to me that the elders that came there to pick up the bundle didn't even know what the heck was going on. And then I went to the airport. I like rented a van. I knew they were coming. I had a whole plan. Hey, we were gonna go pick up the bundle at the museum, and then I was gonna take them. I knew their plane flight wasn't for a couple of days, so I was gonna take them out of the city into Connecticut to Foxwoods, to the Mashantucket Pequot tribe. There's a big casino hotel there. It's a lot of fun, and we were going to stash up there for a couple of days and then go back to their flights and such, right? So I rented a van, like a 10-person van or something, like a big van, you know. And I went to the airport to pick them up, and I missed them somehow. They'd got taxis or something. They got to their first hotel, and so I drove over there and I talked to somebody there. I can't even remember who I met there. Might have been Les Healy. Might have been Narcissus. I can't remember. But the gist of it was, all right, well, we'll see you in the morning. You can come pick us up and we'll go to the museum. And so that was what was intended anyway. I was just going to try to give them a ride to their hotel so they didn't have to pay for taxi.
Sure.
But anyway, so in the morning I went over there to pick them up, and they were all ready to go and got in my van and everything. And we started driving. I started driving over to Harvard, and I was telling them, yeah, we got the Beaver Bundle, like everything stashed off in one room. But it's all pulled apart because I told them how they had it all over the museum,
Right.
And so you guys are going to need to like put it back together and sing it out of there,
Ah.
And I seen them like looking at each other like, what the fuck? What's going on?
Right.
They're all like, what? What? They had no idea. They didn't know who I was. They thought I was somebody working for Harvard. They had no idea they were there to pick up a bundle. It was all hitting them off guard, but they rolled with it.
Yeah.
And I've known these people for the rest of my life now. This is decades later. It's great to be able to like think back on this and think, they were all in that predicament, and they were just rolling with their like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're gonna take a bundle, like they didn't question nothing, didn't ask a question. They just, we're going with whatever. What does this guy say? Okay, so I could see them kind of like figuring out, who's gonna do what and shit, right? And Alan was the only one that, Alan and Frank, hey, seemed to be the ones that like all the locusts were on, all of the fucking, you guys are going to really have to handle this stuff. So we get to the museum and we go into the room where all the bundle components are. And Alan starts like physically putting the bundle together. And Frank is like discussing things with him as he's doing it. I don't know what the hell they're saying because they're talking in Blackfoot.
Yeah.
Martin calls me over to him because he's picked up this like tobacco cutting board from the bundle. And Martin calls me over to me. He's like, what kind of wood is this?
He thinks you work for the museum still.
I don't
No?
know what he thinks.
Oh,
Yeah,
or
yeah, he
copy.
thinks. Well, all of them think I work for the museum.
They think you're an academic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. We don't know what they thought. Of course, it's true.
Yeah, but I don't know what kind of wood it is either.
Of
Like what?
course. Yes.
Yeah, it's just it's a very Martin kind of question though. You know,
Mhm.
of all the things to be curious about, he wants to know what kind of wood that tobacco cutting board is made of.
Right.
And I think Narcissus and Annabelle are looking through my photographs because I went through the whole Peabody collection before they came, everything in storage. And there's some really, the Peabody has the coolest, like most Indiana Jones storage
Hmm.
of all the museums. The Smithsonian has the most guarded. Like to get into the Smithsonian's, and well, I'll tell that when that story comes. Yeah.
You can back off just a little bit. Thanks.
Um, yeah, the I'll tell you about how you get into the Smithsonian when we get to the Smithsonian. But Harvard has the coolest secret little chambers and shit full of like little tiny like elf like doors that you have to climb little ladders to go through, and you move through this little door and it opens up into this gigantic fucking storage of world treasures,
Wow.
you know. um Harvard's, yeah, sorry, I can see myself in the camera. I know how I'm depicting myself. I'm cool with
Okay,
it.
I know.
I
It
don't
just
know
helps.
about you
I
being
just want to
cool
see
with
your
it.
whole face because I want to see your facial expressions. There we go.
Yeah. um so I've taken pictures of everything in Harvard that's Blackfoot, that is listed as Blackfoot. They may have other things too,
Ah.
and that's other stories. I've gone back there for other things, but um, but I took pictures of everything, and there is a pipe in there and a headdress in storage that are very interesting to the Horn Society, and that pipe is what's called a Caesar's pipe. It's a whole different kind of bundle that's now, I don't know if we'll be able to renew it. Alan could have,
Ah.
um, but it didn't get there. There were components we were looking for. They had the pipe, and we could have made the other components even. But
Hmm.
anyway, um, Harvard had the pipe, and they had this headdress, and Narcissus and Frank were looking at my pic, or Narcissus and Annabelle were looking at my pictures, I think, and probably Alvine, that's Narcissus' wife, and and then they start asking Barbara if we could go look at those things. Hey.
Hmm.
And so, um, and then in the midst of that, someone brought up like, "Where's the rattle bag?" I think Al,
Ah.
I think Alan was like, "Where's the bag?" You know,
Uh-huh.
it's on this original list, and they were like, "Oh, we looked for it," and he's like, "If you guys are going into storage, why don't you look again?"
Ah.
So we went off on a journey, a bunch of us from the group, probably half the group. I know Narcissus was in it, Frank was in it, Alvine. I think Annabelle was with us. We went off to and Carol Murray. most important, was with us from Scapi Picani, from the Southern Blackfoot. And so we went off looking in. First, we went into the exhibit, and they opened up the glass case so we could look at the women's society headdress that they had on exhibit.
Oh yeah.
So we took a look at it, and Narcissus told the museum, this is a very important, told Barbara, this is a very important headdress from our women's society. But because you are willing to give us the Beaver Bundle back, we promise we will never ask for this headdress in the future. Now, he did that, I subsequently learned, because it was a fugazi. One of the headdresses the boys had made and sold to Madge Walters, that was BS.
Yeah.
Looked just like the real thing.
Yeah.
But you know what gave it up? No sun, no paint around the brim anywhere. Like, the people who would have worn it would have been painted.
Yeah.
So they knew it was a fake.
Yes.
So that's in Harvard. And
no way. Did you guys find the bag?
Now, yeah, I'm still going on with the story.
Okay.
That was just the exhibit. Then we went into storage. We went into storage, and the first things that the people, were interested in was, like, Frank being a Horn Society elder, and an Anamska, which is very much like a Caesar's pipe, almost. Like, Caesar's pipe is kind of in between beaver pipes and thunder pipes. But Frank was really interested in seeing those things. And so we went up into that secret little like elf door storage area, the really cool area where that shit was, and pulled those things out. And Frank was telling Barbara, when the headdress was in front of him, he got really a serious look in his eye. And he's telling Barbara, I have the transfers for this headdress. I can put it on and walk out of this museum, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think he had her scared. Like, this is this British woman in fucking Massachusetts that like, she ain't used to dealing with prairie Indians at all.
Right.
And Frank was putting it on, like he was gonna, like, I'm gonna take off with this. Fuck you. See what you gonna do? Call the cops? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, right.
What kind of shit show this starts?
Right. Yeah.
So he threatened her, and then he backed off. Played with her a little bit and backed off. So we looked at the Caesar's pipe. We looked at the headdress. They got to check him out and everything. And then And then we went looking for the bag. We went down the storage area where the bag is supposed to be. And we were walking to where the bag was supposed to be. We weren't in that area yet. I mean, we were in the basketry stuff area where there's stuff like that, but we weren't supposed to be in the stack where that was. But Carol heard something singing and stopped and opened a drawer and pulled out the bag.
Ah, yeah.
And there it was with the number and everything.
Wow.
Carol Murray. Yeah. There were other corn husk bags in there. It was like it's like she just, I don't know how she said she heard singing, but the museum didn't even think to check in that area with, obviously there was other corn husk bags there.
Category. Yeah, right. They're the category system, right? Yeah.
It was a drawer with a bunch of them.
Hmm.
And she just kind of like went through them, and there was the one with the right number. She pulled it out and it looked old as fuck, like it should.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No rattles though.
What's that?
No 7 rattles.
Oh, the rattles were already with the bundle.
Oh, really? Wow.
We were just missing the bag.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we went back up. You know, by that time the bundle was put together. They just had to put the rattles in the bag. And then we sang it out of there. And you know what song Alan chose to sing to lead it out of there? Carol carried the bundle, and she would soon become transferred to Beaver Bundle. And Alan was not transferred to Beaver Bundle yet, but he was transferred that bundle. That was his first Beaver Bundle that I took out of Harvard. He became my elder for the Beaver Bundles later. And
were there any bundles alive among people?
There was, at that time,
yeah,
there was 2. One of them owned by Adolf and Beverly Hungry Wolf, and another owned by Paul Raska. Basically, that, you know, like none that were really like inside the tribe. I mean, Paul, you know, Paul's like, none of them were like, oh, like both of those bundles were functional and everything, but they weren't like, once Alan got going, that's when the Beaver bundles started back up. You know, and his teacher was a Kekinam, Mike Swingsunder, who was the same teacher for the other 2, for Adolf and Paul too. He was really the last Beaver man, you know, the last survivor. He grew up with it. His parents had a Beaver Bundle, and when his dad died, he took his dad's role and taking care of it with his mom. And then when his mom died, people stopped coming to the ceremony. And then when people stopped coming to the ceremony, he took his bundle and brought it to the river and gave it back. Gave it back to the water. He thought it was done. And that was like in 1960 something that he did that. And then, you know, mid 1990s, we're bringing beaver bundles back. Sexy too. And yeah, we brought that one back from Harvard, um, and that was transferred to Allen. Now, the song that was sung coming out of the museum was the Snake Man song, When He Cried Anyway.
Really?
The victory song. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a song Alan sang, bringing the Beaver Bundle out, and everybody climbed in that van, and I was like shaking hands. They were all nervous. They're like, "Come on, Ryan, come on, fuck
Like we just robbed the bank.
let's get out of here. We got this bundle. Let's go."
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
Quick
all
before they
shit.
change their mind. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, we went out to Mashantucket. Everybody enjoyed the casino, had a good time. Brought him back to Boston. Everybody got on their plane back, but Carol and Tom had an extra day, and Carol was the one actually bringing the Beaver Bundle back. Okay,
Ah.
had to go through Montana first, and so yeah, um, Carol and Tom spent an extra day with me. I got to tour them around Boston and stuff, and show them my place, and we had a good time. I got to know Carol really well. She ended up becoming the female elder for the Beaver Bundle when I got transferred. So she taught Adrian.
Ah.
Yeah.
And when did the bundle leave the museum?
That was May of 1996. I started negotiating, I think, October of November of the previous year. So it wasn't that long a thing to go through, but I was intense. It was my whole life at that time, you know. And once I'd got that bundle out of the museum, the sense that I felt was that, like, I've done something,
Yeah.
like, okay, if I fucking die, it's okay, because I've done something,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that bundle went home. Alan got transferred, and then about a month later, Joyce Spoonhunter calls me and says, "Hey, you know that group of elders that came up to Harvard to pick up that bundle?" Yeah. So, oh, they're going on another tour. They're going to be in Washington D.C. and then New York and then Chicago. I can't go with them, but somebody really needs to be there to document the collections. Do you think you could do it? So yeah, I used what was left of my GI Bill. Went on tour with the elders. I went to meet them in Washington, D.C. They had no idea I was coming. Joyce didn't tell them. I showed up at the Smithsonian, or no, was it at the Smithsonian? No, it was at the hotel that we were going to stay at that night, I think. But it was a very regal hotel. I don't know where we were staying, but it was good duds. Um, and um,
Wow.
I remember seeing 4 or 5 of the elders sitting on a marble bench in the foyer.
Hold that
And
thought.
yeah,
I'm sorry about this, but
it's okay. It's all right.
4 elders sitting on the marble bench. We'll be back.
Yeah.
So we left with the 4 elders sitting on the marble bench in what? In which museum?
This is in Washington, D.C. I can't remember if I actually met them at the Smithsonian to begin with or at our hotel. I think it was probably at our hotel, but it was very regal. It was right down by the mall somewhere. Um, it was fancy digs, and that night I just remember it was very kind of a romantic night. I came into there were 4 or 5 people on the bench. There was somebody I didn't know, a young woman, um, but others that I met from before. And I think Narcissus and Martin were there. I think, and on that bench. And I think it was one of the two of them that was like, you know, oh, you came all the way from Harvard? Like what are you doing here? You know? Like I thought you were with Harvard. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's where I explained it, right there at that bench.
Hmm. Ah, they still didn't know
They didn't know.
the whole time?
No.
Oh my goodness.
They still thought I was from Harvard.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I think one of the guys was Narcissus because at that point we rented a limousine. And I was in the limousine, I know, with Narcissus and Alvine, his wife, and the young woman who was Margaret Cropbeard Wolf, the one who I didn't know, the new player in the group. And we drove around Washington D.C. that night and looked at all the cool sites. Like we were like, to the limo driver, take us to the Lincoln Memorial, take us to this, take us to that. We just went to all the cool sites and looked at them with the night light shining on them and all that stuff. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
it was our opportunity. Really, like we weren't gonna have time. We were gonna go see the museum the next day, and then we were gonna be off to New York. So it was that night to see Washington D.C. For that, I'd already been there, but um, it was a different kind of visit, and so it was fun. I toured that night with Narcissus and Alvine and Margaret, and went around to those uh, all around Washington D.C. and had fun. Um, and then the next day, we went to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian security is the highest order. Like I was in military intelligence. I was a signals intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army in '98 Charlie. Um, I worked top secret missions and stuff, and like the areas that I worked were not nearly as protected as the Smithsonian's
Hmm.
museum storage. So to get into the Smithsonian's museum storage, what you have to do is go right down to the mall to the Smith. You have to have it set up beforehand, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But when the time has come and you want to, and your day is there and your appointment's there and you're going to go into storage in the Smithsonian, you go down to the mall to the appropriate museum. Mine was the Natural History Museum. And you give them your passport and driver's license. And in exchange for that, they give you a identification card that lets you onto a bus.
Hmm.
That bus drives you out of Washington, D.C. into Maryland to a storage facility that is just, it looks like I've seen lots of maximum security prisons in my life across the country. It looks like a maximum security prison. It's all razor wire, double set perimeter, and you go through a gate. The van driver takes you through a gate. You pull up to the facility, and when you go in the doors, you exchange your badge that they gave you at the museum for a badge at the storage place, and you fill out some paperwork about yourself, just basic stuff, they've already set this up, and you basically you're just signing in, you're taking a badge and all this, and then they assign you an escort. And so for each member of our party, there was a Smithsonian escort to go through the facilities with us.
Wow.
And it's massive. Hey, their facility is massive. Yeah. They've got a lot of stuff. And I've been at the new facility next door to that now as well, which is the new facility for the American Museum the National Museum of the American Indian, which is a newer complex, even more high tech, but all the security stuff is the same. Hey, you have to really go through your shit. Yeah, so and then we went through the Smithsonian. We videotaped it. Or wait, was that the time? No, we didn't videotape that time. Sketch that. I went back to the Smithsonian later and videotaped it with Alan and Chris. That time, what happened was the very first thing, like Joyce had sent me there to take photographs of everything in the collections, and to take notes of everything, that they were saying about the collections and all that stuff to document the whole thing, right?
Right.
So I took out my camera right away and started getting set up. And Martin, my future father-in-law, said to me, "Oh, I hope this isn't going to end up in the National or the National Geographic." At least that's what he said. "I hope this isn't going to end up in the National Geographic." And then I was like, "Well, I don't got to take photographs if you don't want." And I put it away, and that seemed to buy me something,
Yes.
with Martin, maybe with others too.
Yeah.
The rest of the day, we looked at the whole collection. I took lots of notes and everything of what they were talking about, what they were saying, and all of this.
But clearly there was a concern about using the camera
there was a concern about
And
using the
it's an
camera.
important concern that is easy to overlook because the way we live today,
Yep.
right? It's a very important concern. I'm with
Yep.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a concern about the camera. There were parts of the day where people broke down. They were crying. Um, I ended up consoling the young woman, and we started getting along better through that day. Um, by the end of the day, we were on a plane trip to New York with our Smithsonian notes in hand, and me and her were getting along really well. Um, we were going to stay in the what is this place that they had booked us, like somebody in tribal government had booked us this ratty ass place in New York City. They didn't know what they were doing, you know. And the place that they booked us, we cabbed to, and it was just like gross, and it was like
Squalor.
yeah, shared, shared bedroom, shared washroom, like shared washrooms between like four people in two bedrooms kind of things. And me and this girl were like, oh, we'll stay together. And we ended up like choosing to stay in a room. But then Francis First Charger was there.
Mm.
Yeah, now I remember he was there too. And he was like, no, we're not staying in this place, right? He got a hold of us. He's like, no, we're not staying here. We're getting out of here. Um, we're gonna have a meeting with Sumitomo Corporation downtown tomorrow, but they have set us up with rooms in Penn Station. They were Pennsylvania Hotel, which is right
Mm.
above Penn Station.
Mm.
Um, they're expensive, but we just got to make it work, right? So we taxied over to Pennsylvania Hotel, and then um, again, like me and Margaret were like, oh, we'll just room together and split the costs. And if I remember Frank like intervening and being hey, I can give you money for another room, an extra room. And we are like, nah, we'll just make it work. And
Mm.
so we ended up rooming together in Pennsylvania Hotel. We stayed there. I think in New York we were there 3 nights, maybe 4 nights, 3 or 4 nights. So we were in the American Museum of Natural History, as well as the um, the High Foundation, which was it was down on Battery Park, like where you can see like the Statue of Liberty and that kind of thing.
Uh,
There was a big museum for American Indians called the High Foundation. Um, and then that was moved, all that collection. Well, the storage for that was in Brooklyn, but they moved all that collection eventually to Washington D.C. to start the National Museum of the American Indian. But back then in 1996, it was still in New York. That's where we visited it first.
mm.
Okay. So we were there 3 or 4 days, and um, we saw a lot of things. And in terms of my life, the things that were pretty momentous in New York was um, um, Alan, both Alan and Martin um, confronted me one day and told me you're working with us on these bringing these bundles home, and you should probably get more involved in our ceremonies so you learn more about them. And so both of them invited me to their ceremonies. Alan invited me to his, I think it was, he had a thunder pipe still at the time. He had the Beaver Bundle too now, but it was new to him.
Mm.
I didn't get to see his Beaver Bundle quite yet. But I think he invited me to his thunder pipe, and Martin too. And I don't know. I continued the tour, but for me, I think the most momentous thing was probably just those invites. Hey,
Mm.
you know, um, and then having
When
it.
did those ceremonies take place that they invited you to?
That would have been in the summer of, that would probably been June ish in 1996.
What I mean is, did they take place after you went home?
Home.
Back to, oh, right. You're actually living on the East Coast, aren't you? Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was living in Boston at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, of course. Yeah. So where did those ceremonies take place?
In Alberta
When? Later?
in June of 1996.
And how long after the trip?
Really shortly, like weeks after.
I see. Okay. I'm just trying to hold the timeline in my head.
Yeah, no, it was very quick. Like I did the first repatriation in May, they came,
Hmm.
and then by June I was with them on this tour, and by the end of the month I was in ceremony in Alberta.
Mm. And were
And
you
and by
visiting Alberta?
yeah, I was staying, well, I was, yeah, visiting. Yeah.
Okay.
Um yeah, I was by June I was there for Martin. By the end of June I was there for Martin and Alan's ceremonies. And then I was invited back by Mart, like that trip that I came out, I think I stayed a couple of weeks, and I didn't even book anywhere to come, like anywhere to stay or anything. I
Mm.
just I just came, and Alan set up a teepee for me. I stayed a couple of days at Alan's place,
Ah.
and then Martin set up a teepee for me, and I was going to be working, like entering my stuff from my database into the Blood Tribes system, and so that was closer to Martin's, and so I started staying at Martin's, and
Had
he
you
said
spent had you spent any time in a teepee before?
no.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in a teepee for those 2 weeks.
Ah.
First at Allen's and then at Martin's. And then Martin invited me back for Aquacots in the Sundance that summer. So I came back, and I was back probably another couple, 2, 3 weeks. Um, and so I got to experience my first Sundance. And while I was there, well, that wasn't even the Sundance trip. I'm sorry. That was the first trip when I came to the Thunder Pipes
Mhm.
in the end of June. Um, there was a day when I was working at Blood at the Shot Both Sides building in Standoff at the Blood Tribe headquarters, entering my stuff in their database. And Frank came to the building, and he asked if he could take me to lunch in Fort McLeod.
Ah.
And so I told him, yeah. So I jumped in his truck, and he took me to lunch in Fort McLeod. but the whole thing was he was wanting to go after the thunder pipe that we had seen in the Smithsonian
Ah.
in Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
And he wanted to go in after that as a vow to try to, like, he had crippling arthritis like Mahoney, you know.
Hmm.
He wanted to go after it to like try to help his arthritis. And he wanted to go after it different. He said, I don't want to use that law. He said, I want to use transfer.
Hmm.
He said, I believe that the elders in the past that gave the bundles to the museums did so to ensure that the bundles would be here, you know, for other generations to use. But when they when they did it, um, you know, however, there's some stuff that we have documented where they actually, we know they transferred it, you know,
Ah.
to the museum person.
Mhm.
Um, but there's other cases where it was just straight out bought. And Frank was like, however the Smithsonian got to this bundle, um, because we didn't really know, hey, with that one.
Ah.
He's like, however they got to this bundle, he's like, I still consider the Smithsonian the current caretaker owner,
Ah.
and I want to approach them like from my way with our kind of respect. I want them to transfer to me.
Mhm.
And of course, they don't know the ceremony. I'll have an elder there to do the transfer, but I want their representatives there to transfer it to me.
Yes.
And I'm going to pay them like I would pay for a transfer of this bundle.
Ah.
And they know what the purpose is. And I'm going to explain to them how this bundle came about, how transfer works. You're going to do that for me. You're going to write that for me. And so that was my next mission, was to write Frank's repatriation, which was not like no other repatriation. It was a transfer request. Like we wrote it like as if I'm going, because with those particular bundles, even, you don't go and ask for it yourself. You have a mediator go for you. And we did it just like that.
Hmm.
Hey.
Hmm.
And the Smithsonian said that was the best repatriation request they'd ever received.
Ah.
And hastily made the bundle come home, you know?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it didn't come home before I came back for the Sundance. I was back for the Sundance before that bundle came home. So I was there for those couple of pipe ceremonies. And then Martin asked me to come back for the Sundance, which was mind blowing because, you know, if you're from the modern world, like I came in, I flew into Great Falls and he picked me up there. And even coming from, you know, the East Coast, the city, when you fly into Great Falls, all you hear is the wind, and it's so different.
Ah.
There's it's such a different kind of quiet that you don't know.
Hmm.
And then Martin drove me, you know, up into Alberta, picked me up in Great Falls, drove me up into a giant camp. And it was nighttime when we got in, a giant camp of, you know, fire glowing teepees.
Hmm.
Like like I don't know, like you know, like it was like taking a time machine or something. Like people were riding horses around camp and singing, and it's crazy. It's so different, you know.
Ah,
And yeah, so I had the Sundance. Went to spent time at the Sundance. By that time, I was still kind of messing around with that crop-eared wolf girl,
mm,
but I was also kind of checking out Martin's daughter
mm,
and started talking to her a little, one of Martin's daughters. And and then I went back to Boston again. Um, what did I work on at that point? What was the next repatriation? I think that's when the Hoopa contacted me and wanted me to start talking to me about negotiating with them for Harvard, because
mm.
they had been the Hoopa from California had been really trying to get their ceremonial things back from Harvard for a couple of years at least, and just was just getting shut down.
Mm.
And they heard that somebody got something out of there. They're like, "Can we hire you? We've got this anthropologist um, who has worked with us since the 70s, who'll help you, you know.
Mm.
She lives in New York City. You can stay with her. She's got a giant Hoopa library, you know."
Ah,
So I took a contract with the Hoopa. Um, and then Martin invited me before I went to the Hoopa or to New York City. I was still in Boston, but Martin had invited me to a Ganotsis, a winter ceremony. And so I flew back out to Alberta to do the Ganotsis. And when that at that point, like I couldn't stay in a teepee; it was winter.
mm.
So I stayed at Martin's house, and he gave me a truck to use. And he said, "But I need you to, while you're staying here, you can use this truck, but I need you to drive Danielle around. You know, she has to go to college every day." But it wasn't just like I'd take her to college, drop her off, and bring her back home at the end of the day and stuff. But then in the evening, you know, if anything wasn't particularly happened, Martin would be like, "Hey, maybe you should take the truck and Danielle and go into town and go see a movie or something," you know? Like
Mm.
he was just encouraging us to be around each other, it seemed to me.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing led to another.
Mm.
And then um I was supposed to be going home. I was supposed to be going to Boston and then going to New York. The my flight was a particular day, and Martin was supposed to bring me down to Great Falls to set me off.
Mm.
As we headed down, he started going down the back roads of the blood reserve. Um, I never I never realized it, but we never got off the blood reserve.
Mm.
Like I know it now, but he was just driving. He was just stalling. driving around the back roads, driving around the back roads until my flight was, I'm going to be late for my flight.
Uh,
And he's then, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to, we haven't even crossed the border. I'm not going to make it. He's like, oh, yeah. Well, you should reschedule your flight. Let's go to the lake and check out this. There's this place where there's supposed to be these human footprints from like 10,000 years ago, you know? Let's go check those out. So we went to go like explore and have fun and stuff. But basically, I missed my flight and I rebooked my flight for like another week or something, an extra week. But that bought me time because Danielle and I had just kind of got found out by her parents and by Martin and Pam that we were uh, hanging out a little more than just driving her to school and stuff and whatever. And so I think Martin bought me some more time with her, basically, you know. I don't know. But anyway, I ended up staying there some more, even though I was supposed to go. And then when I went, then I just sent Danielle a ticket to follow me.
hmm.
And I brought her to New York with me. And we subsequently eloped. And I started working the Hoopa case, which is a whole nother story. I don't know. Do we want to get into that part, or what do you want to do? Or do you have questions or about any? Like I continued to do from there. Like I just went into a repatriation. Like eventually, I get to the meteorites and all that shit too. But I continued to work Blackfoot repatriations. But I started. The Hoopa contacted me, let me know that maybe I can use what I'm doing to help like other people and to make a living. Because I've been heretofore like doing all my repatriation stuff for the Blackfoot just on my own dime, just for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Hoopa contracted me. I thought, oh, well, one thing that I've got a database of more than 4,000 worldwide museums that have native collections, you know. Maybe another tribe would want me to recontact those museums and ask for their inventories, you know, or, you know.
Right.
So I started pitching that around. Eventually, I got a bite on that from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in Oregon, where I grew up, the Kalapuya mostly. But yeah, before that, I was in New York. I lived in New York City on City Island for I think Mahoney and I were there like 4 months, something like that. The first part of the project, we went to Harvard to go look at the collection. Okay. And I went with Hoopa's. Well, the whole thing, like I worked with her. Her name was Lee Davis. She's a famous anthropologist.
Wow.
She's from your area. She's at Berkeley, or her last place of employment was at Berkeley that I knew of. But like after she worked with me, she went to Berkeley again. She'd been there before. But so she was with me the whole time, but me and her ended up not getting along very well at all. Me and Lee. Yeah. Yeah, I'd have rather just do my own contract and not have to be in any kind of thing with Lee.
Uh,
But it was interesting, you know. We went to Harvard first, and we were this was even before Mahoney got there. Okay, before Danielle, before I flew her there. When I first got there, our first step was we got to go look at the collection, you know. So we went to Harvard, and going through the collection, an event happened. We were pulling, like, the way that we had it working was we were trying to photograph everything so we could take the photographs and bring them back to California to the Hoopa elders and share the photographs with them, and then get them talking about the things, you know. So I could write my claim. And when we were going through the stacks at the Peabody, Anne Marie was with me again, Anne Marie Victor Howe, and she would actually, like, take the item from the drawer. She might have to climb a ladder. A lot of things are up high and shit.
mm-hmm.
She takes an item from a drawer, and she passes it down to Lee. And Lee would read out the tag number on it and description and give it to me. And I had a clipboard that I would check off the items, so I knew we got each item on the inventory. Okay. And when she passed it to me, I'd take the item, and I had a cart. Okay. And I put it on the cart, and we were going to wheel that into another room with better lighting and take photographs. So as we're going through the storage, Emery picks up this thing from a drawer up high in a ladder and hands it down. And Lee Davis says, "Stone pipe 98127," whatever the fuck the number was, you know. Stone pipe, and hands it to me. And as I'm like less than a second from touching it, I can see that this is not a smoking pipe, but this is a stone pipe, but it's a bored through.
Yeah.
This is something that doctors used to suck sickness out of people with. And that recognition hit my mind just as I touched it. And then it was like electricity went through my body, and I started blacking out. And it took everything, like all the concentration that I had to put that thing on the cart and let go of it before blacking out. And I didn't black out, but wait.
Okay. 1 minute.
I got violently sick.
1 minute.
Sick. Okay. We'll go to the next.
But, yeah. 1 minute. Yeah. So you were at the museum, they hand you down the stone pipe, you touch, just as you're starting to reach for it, you realize this isn't a smoking pipe.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah, you know
I
what
recognize
it's for.
it. I recognize it just at the point where I'm touching it.
Yeah.
And it almost knocks me to the ground. Like I don't know I've had no comparable experience except for one other artifact that I touched in a museum later that maybe we'll get to at a further point. But this was the most intense of this kind of thing, and it really felt like I was being just like, I don't know, I was being put to sleep electrically in a weird way, and um, I resisted it enough to put the pipe down. I think if I'd held on to it even a fraction of a second later, I'd have been on the ground. You know, like I just barely managed to put that pipe down without passing out, and then I immediately had the worst kind of flu and cold symptoms like flood me in the next 5 minutes
Wow.
that I had to bow out for the day. Like leave the museum, go to my hotel, and I slept for I think it 14 hours
Hmm.
and woke up okay again.
Hmm.
But it was the most bizarre thing. Um, but the hoopa ended up loving it. Um, you know, of course, I reported it later to them. Like we visited Harvard, photographed all of their stuff, and most of the stuff that they wanted out is like their whole tradition is very like it's different from the Blackfoot by a long shot. Hoopa, they really surprised me. Like I'm from the West Coast. I grew up in Western Oregon, and the Hoopa are in this little valley called Trinity Valley, Northern California by Eureka area, kind of redwoody area. Their Trinity River spills into the what? Uh, Klamath,
Hmm.
Klamath, that goes into the ocean. And what's very interesting there is that where the Trinity River meets the Klamath, right? You get a T intersection. The Hoopa is on the Trinity River, which is just like a mile and a half long, and that's their whole territory.
Hmm.
It's maybe a mile and a half wide and a mile and a half long, or something like that. It's a
Wow.
very short thing. Okay. The Hoopa are there. Up when they hit the T, upstream from the T is Karuk, and downstream is Yurok, and the downstream feeds into the ocean. Right. So Yurok connect to the ocean. But those three tribes, the Hoopa and the Karuk and the Yurok, um, speak entirely different languages from entirely different language families, but practice the exact same cultural complex and ceremonies and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
This is one of the cases that um, Franz Boas, the first American anthropologist, used to try to disprove that there is any connection between culture, language, and race.
Ah.
So, in any case, they surprised me because they're they still got a lot of their culture. They still got their language. They still got their ceremonies. I experienced magic in Hoopa Valley,
Hmm.
like serious magic, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's something else, and they're very different. Like in the old Blackfoot stories, way back in Napi era, which is like the earliest Blackfoot stories, maybe 12,000 plus years ago, the men and the women lived in separate camps,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and there's a story and a place here called Akipiska on the women's buffalo jump where it took place, where the men and women finally came together to live together here. But before that, men and women had lived in separate camps, and basically women had prepubescent boys with them, you know.
Hmm.
But then once they hit puberty, they'd go to the men's camp, right?
I see. Yeah.
And it's following, you know, kind of like ungulate type of knowledge,
Like
um,
here.
like the deer. In the hoopah, it's the deer.
Hmm.
I think here it was the bison,
Hmm.
you know, but in the hoopah is the deer for sure. And there's a time when the deer get together for the rut. And that was the only time of year where the men and women could like live together.
Hmm.
And so if you were not born basically as a Taurus, like late April into May, you are considered an illegitimate child in the hoopah.
I see.
You are not conceived when men and women are supposed to be together.
Right.
And that's kind of still the case there. Even though they still they live now, men and like people live with their spouses and all that jazz, you know. My experience there was that the men are very effeminate and the women are very, you know, butchy.
Hmm.
And it's a different, and they're still like kind of talking about that stuff and in that mind zone, you know, like
Hmm.
um
Yes. Yes. It's their way of life, and
it's
it's
their way
been
of life.
preserved.
It is preserved, it's still going on. And we went into their old villages, like the old pit houses and stuff where they still do their ceremonies and things. There are very important features that have gone missing from the like official, like if you look at pictures of those villages at the turn of the century compared to pictures of the villages in the 1950s or 60s, you're going to see really important things are missing.
Hmm.
Those things are still there. They're just hidden.
Ah.
They're there. They're all there. Everything is still there. Um, and there's weird things that can go on there.
Yeah, that gives us a good lead in for another chapter.
Sure.
Um, I I just feel so grateful to be able to be with you tonight and hear these stories. Yeah,
Oh, it's
and
crazy. Like
record them.
I don't know. I don't even. It's weird to be retelling them because um it seems so fantastical, a lot of it now, you know. And I'm just like regular blood Indian, desperate in Lethbridge, you know. Like
Yes, well, they were glorious. They're glorious moments that live on still.
yeah. Yeah, it's all still part of the whole, like those are history that have made major ripples. Like what we did bringing that stuff back has changed count, like it's hard to even imagine how much it's changed the community and the people, you know. a lot. Education is totally different, I think, as a result.
Thank you so much for sharing these things. I hope we'll get to continue in a very, nearby moment. I'm gonna end the recording here. We can keep talking. But thank you for sharing all of this, Ryan. So
You bet.
so grateful.
You bet.